Chapter 181, Tony's Magic Fungi. While Mordo faced a crisis of his own, Tony wasn't having an easy time either. The creatures attacking the New York Sanctum were straight out of hell. Three-headed dogs, two-headed dragons, hydra beasts, leviathans. They were huge, with high magic resistance, thick hides, and absurdly long health bars. When the wizard team unloaded unforgivable curses, the hell creatures only charred black, shook themselves, and became even more ferocious. The Avada Kedavra, imbued with killing intent, didn't kill them, it only stoked their savage instincts. The sorcerers had to switch tactics fast. Some raised seraphim shields up front, the rest behind the shields rained down spells, bolts of Balthak, severing charms, fiendfire. Magic filled the expanded mirror dimension, every sorcerer throwing their strongest at the horde. Still, the monster's magic resistance was overwhelming. Hogwarts-style wizardry was nearly futile. Only the white magic drawn from the Vishanti could actually wound these abominations, especially the bolts of Balthak. When the golden lightning orb bounced and struck, it could reliably kill a hell creature, but that spell was difficult and costly. Only a handful of the sorcerers could cast it. After several rounds of bombardment, the front lines holding the shields began to buckle. More beasts spilled from the rift every few seconds, charging like kamikazes. Rows of seraphim shields developed hairline cracks, then splintered. "It's our turn," Tony barked. He canceled the deformation curse on his armor and shifted back into his towering suit, Mark 10, tens of meters tall. He launched into the horde, diving through monsters and sweeping with improved repulsor beams, cleaving off entire sections. Natasha vaulted over the shield line, spear raised. "Girls, show them what you've got," she shouted. The women in black charged in formation. They moved like soldiers bred to be killers. Yelena uppercut a head off a three-headed dog, then, while ducking under the other two, sliced off another. For a moment, 100 of those operatives stopped the Hell Army's momentum. The sorcerers in the rear got a breath, and then rejoined the fight. Cedarak's crimson chains to help control the beasts, Vishanti's holy sword, and the rings of Ragador in hand, charging forward. Kamartaj's sorcerers were different. They were warriors as much as mages, willing to spill blood and make sacrifices. "Who's this Hell Lord anyway? Why does he only send multi-headed monsters?" Tony complained. One armored hand locked around a two-headed dragon's throat as he kept blasting one maw with lasers. "Maybe he's a big talker and needs extra mouths to keep up," Banner replied through the comms. "Banner, you're saying I'm a chatterbox too? Don't. I'm clearly serious." Tony shot back, then watched as the dragon's other head snapped at his armor and sank teeth into his arm. The fungus that made up his suit shredded under massive bites. Tony's instincts clicked. Electrical signals raced through the chip at the base of his skull, and the injured arm didn't stay solid. Its plating dissolved into 1,000 black fungal threads that poured out and wrapped the dragon. The fungus's devouring ability, one Tony had always treated with caution, turned offensive. The two-headed dragon screamed as the threads swarmed it. Then the fungus consumed it down to withered bones. Its dimensional energy soaked into the fungal biomass. Tony felt the suit's mass tick upward, an extra inch here, several centimeters there. "This works," he murmured, shaking the dragon's skeleton off. "A little brutal, but hey, we're fighting Hellspawn." "What did you say?" Banner asked. "I said I think I've found a way to deal with these things," Tony announced. His eyes lit. He'd always seen the fungus's appetite as a double-edged sword and avoided letting it feed freely. He hadn't expected the ability to be a weapon against creatures from other dimensions. "Everyone, fall back," Tony ordered, suddenly. "Pull back now and raise your shields. Fast!" The women in black glanced at each other, but obeyed. Even if their boss's brother was unpredictable, he wasn't reckless at critical moments. The sorcerers hesitated, then followed. With the front line retreating, pressure eased enough for them to reposition. Once the seraphim shield barrier was redeployed, Tony, holding a large hell creature in one hand, laughed. "Okay, next scene is going to be awesome. You've never seen anything like it." Black fungal threads burst from Mark 10's hands, snaking out and covering the two monsters he held. In seconds, they were reduced to nutrients. Tony's fungi weren't supposed to have that level of devouring power, but these threads were being charged by the 10 rings. The ring's mysterious energy neutralized the dimensional protections the monsters carried, letting fungal filaments penetrate down to their cellular cores. As Mark 10 absorbed the beast's energy, the armor grew a few centimeters bigger. Then Tony set the plan in motion. Jarvis, route everything to the 10 rings, max output. Let the fungal network grow without limits. Yes, sir, came the familiar, calm voice. Jarvis's processes had already linked into the chip behind Tony's neck to assist in combat. With both systems driving energy into the rings, Mark 10's massive chassis dissolved explosively. The black and gold giant collapsed into a million fungal tendrils that surged outward across the mirror dimension's floor like a spreading slick. Like oil, but this oil burned different. The fungal threads didn't consume oxygen, they consumed the life inside the hell creatures. The monsters, arrogant and certain, ignored the dark mat underfoot. That was their mistake. When the threads climbed over them and wrapped their torsos, the creatures' roars began to falter. The fungal mass leached their dimensional essence, and within seconds, the invaders shriveled to withered bone. In the rising steam of dying magic and collapsing shrieks, every beast that had come through the portal was drained and dead. Mark 10 reformed, each kill transferring more energy into Tony's armor. The fungal suit swelled, richer and taller, the 10 rings humming as the living armor fed on the vanquished, Tony's brutal, brilliant new weapon against Hell's armies. Chapter 182, Zhang is a human or a ghost. Everyone's showing off. Only Mordo is getting beaten down. The mirror dimension was so silent you could hear a pin drop. The sorcerers stood agape. Even the men in black, who had already seen the fungus god armor, were visibly stunned, their emotions barely contained. Tony extended the armor's arms, expecting cheers and applause. He waited, and nothing came. He turned to find the sorcerers staring at him like boys in a church looking at a priest. The men in black looked slightly more composed, but their expressions were a mix of mild admiration and thinly veiled disgust. All right, you're as unappreciative as Leon, Tony said with a shrug. Secretly, he decided his next armor would be so dazzling there'd be no choice but to go, ooh. Tony, are you okay over there? Do you need support? Banner's voice came over the shared channel. What could possibly be wrong? Tony answered, putting on a breezy tone. These little hell things are adorable. Jarvis and I both like them a lot. He walked toward the spatial portal. Strange creatures from hell continued pouring out, but Mark 10 had turned into a meat grinder. Whatever crawled through the gate was instantly devoured. The scene was like fish flopping into a frying pan, one after another, eyes rolling, all swallowed up. Banner, I've got this side. You and the sorcerers should support the other two temples, Tony said. The battles were all linked through the mirror dimension, so Banner could no longer see all three temple fights on a single projection. Fortunately, the sorcerers were maintaining connections with the outside world using the mystic art of portals, so communications weren't interrupted. Banner sounded skeptical. Are you sure you're not putting on a brave face? This isn't the time to be stubborn, Tony. Everyone knew Tony could be stubborn. His face darkened. Banner, I can handle the little guys here. I promise. Okay, Wang, how about you? Banner asked. Wang's voice came through next. The kid Leon brought, Pietro? Honestly, he's a handful. Hong Kong Temple. When the Hell Demons first appeared, the Bloodline Wizards opened with a massive wave of green spellfire, Avada Kedavra style, but only 2 demons fell. Wang saw immediately that typical wizard spells were geared more toward fighting humans. Against these hellspawn, white magic with special attack enchantments would be far more effective. He split his sorcerers into control, defense, and assault teams, and started to arrange the battle line. Then, at that moment, Pietro, who had only been issued a magical dagger, bolted out of the formation. Wang blinked. He couldn't tell whether the kid had abandoned his position to attack or was trying to run. Pietro's movements were nearly impossible to track. Now here, now gone, appearing as flickering shadows that vanished in the blink of an eye. Hey, kid. Leon told you to stay with me, so what's your where are you? Wang began, not finishing his reprimand. Pietro popped up in front of him, twirling the dagger in his palm as if warming up. Done, he announced, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Done with what? Wang frowned. Something about this kid didn't add up. Pietro glanced at the portal. I handled them. Wong looked where Pietro pointed. The demons that had been flying or lunging across the ground were frozen in place, coughing as if a broken pipe had been set in their chests. They clawed feebly at their throats. Across each neck ran a deep, bone-white wound from ear to ear, blackened and spurting purple or green ichor. Normally, such wounds wouldn't stop a demon. Healing would kick in immediately. But above each wound, a faint golden energy shimmered, sealing it, preventing regeneration. That's Vishanti's enchantment energy. You slit all their throats with that dagger. Wong stared at Pietro in horror. When this kid had first arrived in Camartage, he'd seemed ordinary. After one training session with Leon, he'd suddenly become something else. Wong's throat bobbed. For a second, he had an absurd, eager thought of going to Leon and begging to apprentice him. Hey, snap out of it. Some are recovering and more are coming. Pietro shook Wong by the shoulder, pulling him out of his daydream. Oh, right. Wong blinked, then snapped into action. The artifact's enchantment won't finish them. Everyone, move in and finish them while they're vulnerable. Wong formed the seals, called forth Vishanti's holy sword, and charged, bellowing as he struck. Pietro's dagger had done the work of incapacitating them. The sorcerers moved in to finish the creatures. The fight became efficient and brutal. Demons appeared. Pietro slit their throats. The sorcerers beheaded them. It was an industrialized slaughter. Hong Kong had become a guillotine line where demons queued to be dispatched. Wong's arm grew numb from cutting. His energy longsword was chipped at the edge from the continuous onslaught. The demons on the other side of the portal grew cautious and wouldn't step forward. When Banner checked in, Wong could honestly say he felt no pressure. I've got Pietro here. We're fine. You all go support Mordo, he reported. Also, call me Quicksilver from now on, Pietro added. Leon says it suits me. After the battle with the Hellspawn, Pietro understood the shift in his own strength. He no longer resented Leon's brutal training. In fact, he felt grateful. The nickname fit. Quicksilver sounds fast. Then Hong Kong doesn't need support, Banner mused, rubbing his chin. Wanda watched, hands on her forehead, inwardly scolding her naive brother for being tamed by Leon. When Leon got back, Pietro would probably try to take credit. Banner and Wanda both suspected that, but for now the results spoke for themselves. Banner turned to the last temple. Mordo, how are you? Do you need... My Vishanti, finally! London needs support. Come now! Mordo's voice burst out, raw with relief and urgency. These octopus monsters can erode the mind. There are too many of them. Mordo and his sorcerers were being worn down by the psychic onslaught of massive cephalopod creatures, and he had been holding back, waiting for Banner to ask. When Banner's attention had gone first to New York and Hong Kong, Mordo had kept quiet, enduring the strain. Now he seized the opening to call for help. Need support? Banner's tone turned immediately to action. I'm on my way. Let me go. I'm good with mind things. Wanda jumped up, eager. If Pietro could handle Hellspawn, she could deal with dimensional monsters. Both had trained with Leon. Who else would prove themselves better than her brother? Before Wanda could step into London's fixed teleportation portal, two sharp slaps sounded behind her. Banner slapped his own chest twice, bringing out the Hulk. Hulk! The green behemoth roared, vaulted over Wanda's head in a single leap, and blasted straight into the portal. Wanda was left standing there, stunned and more than a little exasperated, watching the Hulk disappear. She crossed her arms and glared as Banner's voice faded away. Chapter 183. Zhang Wanda's first battle. Banner had already learned star projection at a basic level. What he could do now was only project his own soul outside his body when he became the Hulk. He still couldn't separate the Hulk's portion from his physical form, and if he was in control of the body, he couldn't leave it either. Leon had explained that Banner's mutation made his soul more stable than a normal person's. Even so, Banner was relieved. At least now, after transforming, he could still watch from the sidelines. When the Hulk began to lose control, he could step in and say a few words. He no longer had to vanish mentally as before, losing awareness of the world and leaving no memory of what happened. At that moment, the Hulk strode through two portals and into the mirror dimension, while Banner's astral form floated beside him, barking orders. Quick, do you see that big octopus over there, Hulk? Go deal with it. The mirror dimension was a mess. A few sorcerers stood with vacant expressions, mouths open and drooling as if their minds had been eaten away. The rest clung to sanity by sheer force of will. There were no confirmed fatalities at the London sanctum yet, but the situation was desperate. Master Mordo was wrapped in the tentacles of a massive octopus, swung through the air and cursing in frustration. Banner pointed the Hulk at that target. Hulk didn't care. He gave Banner a dismissive look and snorted, then suddenly leapt and raised both fists to smash a different octopus. "No, the other one! Not that one!" Banner fumed, floating beside him and stomping his astral feet. The more he worried, the less the Hulk listened. "Hulk, smash!" the Hulk bellowed. He grabbed one tentacle, yanked with all his might, and swung it high. Rotating like a hammer throw, he took a few short steps and flung the tentacle. It arced through the air and slammed into the octopus that had Mordo. The two creatures collided, rolled together, and finally released the helpless sorcerer. "Nice job, Hulk!" Banner cheered, throwing his hands up. The Hulk hadn't followed his directions, but the result was good. Banner felt a strange kinship with this force of nature, like dealing with those wild erumpents. Powerful, unruly magical beasts that had to be indulged, or they'd show you how unhappy they could make you. Maybe the Hulk was just another kind of magical creature. In that daze, Banner convinced himself he'd found a way to get along with him. "Powerful Hulk, because of you, the crisis is resolved. Leon will think differently of us." Banner flattered. The Hulk didn't answer, his eyes blazing as he faced the remaining octopus-like beings. He roared, leaped high, and dove down like a tornado heading for a parking lot. A clear female voice cut through the roar. "Rise!" Dozens of the octopus creatures froze as a crimson energy washed over them. They floated up, immobilized, their tentacles unable to move as if bound by an invisible force. "Hulk?" The Hulk landed hard and looked up, bewildered. How was he supposed to fight now? Banner turned toward the entrance to the mirror dimension, where the sorcerers had come through. Wanda stood there, red energy swirling around her hands. She controlled the dimensional creatures. Wanda? Banner slapped himself mentally. If he'd known this girl was so powerful, why had he changed into the Hulk at all? He'd ruined a pair of pants for nothing. "Dimensional beings, go back to your own dimension," Wanda said, and the creatures, under the command of her chaos magic, expanded and then dissolved into bundles of fibrous ribbons. Under Leon's guidance, Wanda had learned to shape chaos magic and alter reality on a basic level. After dispersing the dimensional beings, she flew toward the portal and pushed her hands to close it. The portal was clogged with dense dimensional energy, however, and she couldn't clear it fast enough. New creatures continued to pour out. Time didn't allow her to dismantle the portal's energy alone. "I'll leave this to Leon when he returns," she decided. Wanda stood there, holding the doorway. Like the sorcerers defending the other sanctums, every time a being came through, she killed it with a snap or a gesture. As the corrupted sorcerers slowly regained their faculties, they watched Wanda dispatch a monster with each motion of her hands. Their minds overloaded. Whose subordinate was this woman, and why was she so unafraid? As the three sanctums fought a heating battle against the extra-dimensional invaders and the forces of hell, the contest inside the world ring between Leon and Dormammu reached its turning point. They began by hurling planets at one another, meteor showers and cataclysmic orbital strikes, but soon it dissolved into pure energy combat. Dormammu fired dimensional beams from his mouth, eyes, and palms at once. Leon answered with scorching heat rays, and the Space Stone's energy spilling from his hands, forming a Kamehameha-like barrage. They fought from the continent's rim to its center and back again. A heat ray would shear through a mountain, a dimensional cannon would gouge a ravine. The continent, tens of thousands of kilometers across, had its volume reduced by a tenth under the strain of their clashes. Dormammu grew reckless. Spellcraft, dark energies, elemental manipulations, none of it breached Leon's defenses. Instead, his own body was shredded repeatedly. In the end, Dormammu hurled himself into close-quarters combat. Leon treated him like a practice bag, no, like a baseball to be flung. Every time they traded blows, the Dormammu suit around Leon automatically attenuated Dormammu's strikes to a mere 1/10,000th of their original force. Even if Dormammu poured in the power to destroy a star, the most he accomplished was sending Leon hurtling backward to crash through a few mountain ranges. Leon would reappear moments later, virtually unscathed. Dormammu, by contrast, paid a heavy price. He recoiled with Leon, but emerged from each exchange bloodied and torn, arms missing, wounds everywhere, his body literally falling apart under the strain. Chapter 184, Dormammu's Promise. Dormammu's physical constitution could not compare to Lion's. His strength came almost entirely from dimensional energy, and Lion had just used the Space Stone to seal off the small world, cutting Dormammu's line to the dark dimension. Each use drained Dormammu further. In a drawn-out fight, he would only grow weaker. Lion, by contrast, seemed to gain with every blow. His momentum increased, and his grasp of the cosmic laws advanced with each exchange. Leon even carried the sun with him, letting him recover from injuries quickly under its light. Dormammu felt his own reserves ebbing. After unleashing an attack that might have destroyed a star, he had been left spent and was being flung through space like a mere baseball. Still, he would not surrender. He dragged himself from the wreckage and began to mend. Leon hovered in the air, cape billowing. "Dormammu, perhaps it's time we talked," he said. Dormammu glared. "I have nothing to talk about with you." "I admire your resolve," Lion replied with a shrug. "I hope you enjoy the next show." Then Lion rose and disappeared above the continent. Dormammu watched him go, bewildered. What was the Sorcerer Supreme planning now? Without warning, a colossal human-shaped form filled his sight, an entity over 1,000 kilometers tall. Beside it, Dormammu, at only a few hundred meters, was a speck. "This is a celestial?" he murmured, though the figure's features were wrong for any celestial he knew. Confusion turned to alarm as the giant squatted, extended a palm, and scooped Dormammu up. As the face came close, Dormammu felt an odd familiarity. The giant said nothing. It smiled and poured out a flood of light, energy condensed into matter around its body. Dormammu's mouth burned with alarm. The flames atop his head flared. "You're going to self-destruct? Wait." Before he could finish, the 1,000-kilometer form detonated, the energy of a planet compressed and then blown apart. Space itself warped at the blast's center. Light, particles, and shock currents spun like an immense magnified Rasengan. Lion descended from orbit, exhaled, and a gale rose 3 feet from his chest. It took a long moment for the aftershocks to die down. When the dust settled, a chasm tens of thousands of kilometers wide gaped in the continent. At its bottom, Dormammu lay half-buried, only his head and upper torso remaining, groaning as his body slowly reformed. "The small clones made by the Blood Sea are perfect for self-destruction," Lion said, nodding with satisfaction. He had controlled that small clone with his consciousness, and the self-detonation had been instantaneous and painless. Great power with minimal side effects, small clones were portable bombs. As he contemplated, he wondered how devastating they might be when he grew stronger. One day they might even create black holes. Back inside his inner world, Blood Sea Lion fashioned another small clone. With a thought, he plucked a 1,000-kilometer-tall duplicate from within himself and hurled it into space. Boom. Another self-destruction. He repeated the process, spawning one Blood Sea small clone after another. Each time Dormammu's wounds knitted enough to allow movement, Leon sent another clone to explode. Dozens of detonations tore the continent apart until the single landmass the size of tens of millions of kilometers had been blasted into 5 separate continents. On one of the shattered fragments, Dormammu pushed rubble aside and raised a trembling hand. He lay in the pit, drained and oddly calm. We need to talk," he said weakly. The fire that had once burned tyrannically in him had cooled. He could not keep up the malice any longer. Lion hovered across from him, expression unreadable. "What do we have to talk about?" "As long as you don't demand control of the dark dimension," Dormammu said, voice thin. "I'll listen to anything else." Lion raised an eyebrow. "So you acknowledge me as your master?" He had access to the secret technique the beast god Joe of the Starry Sky world had given him, methods for soul enslavement. If Dormammu willingly opened his mind, Lion could bind him. But Lion had not considered forcing the ritual. Even as a world lord, he lacked the soul power to enslave a dimensional demon god outright. A forceful attempt would probably drive Dormammu to immediate suicide and ensure bitter vengeance upon resurrection. Dormammu sneered despite himself. "Impossible. Kill me if you want, but don't take the authority of the dark dimension. If I return, when I resurrect in the dark dimension..." Lion frowned. Even defeated, the old tyrant still tried to threaten. He leapt and slammed a fist down onto Dormammu's skull. The demon howled, then relented. Resurrect? Humph, Leon said coldly. Do you think you'll come back whole? How many Hell Lords are coveting your realm? If you die and come back, will you still have the power to fend them off? Or might Mephisto snatch the dark dimension before you return? The flames on Dormammu's crown shifted color in agitation. Lion's point cut deep. He fell silent for a long breath. I cannot give you dimensional authority, he said at last, voice low, but I can allow the sorcerers of Kamartaj to draw on my power without fee. Lion scoffed. You want a group of Vishanti-worshipping sorcerers using dark magic? That's generous. Does that include me? In the Starry Sky system's later stages, advancement consumed stupendous amounts of energy, often the reserves of entire universes. Free access to the Dark Dimension's energy would postpone Lion's resource worries for a long time. If he could drain that realm, the identity of its dimensional lord would matter little. Dormammu, misreading the schemer's silence for temptation, hurried on. Of course, you are the Sorcerer Supreme. You can draw from the Dark Dimension. Good, Lion said. That's one condition. What else? Dormammu blinked. What else? Isn't that enough? The vanquished must cede territory and pay reparations, Lion said. You've offered reparations, but you've ceded no land yet. The fire on Dormammu's head darkened. You still want my dimensional authority. You best let me send you back to the Dark Dimension now, or you'll regret it, Dormammu snapped. Lion raised a fist. You still dare to threaten me? Lion demanded. Dormammu recoiled. He said quietly, I came here to devour a world, not to linger. There is something else. Strange of your main universe on this timeline is in the Dark Dimension now with my niece Klee. They are resolving a world collision crisis. Lion's eyes narrowed. Universe collision? How does it occur? How are they trying to fix it? Explain. Dormammu spread his hands. It's a collision born of that Strange's reckless hopping through parallel universes. His traversals disrupted the multiversal order. The simplest solution would be to destroy one of the universes. But Strange and Clea appear to be pursuing another path. They're secretly doing something in the Dark Dimension. If you let me go back now, Dormammu concluded, voice suddenly earnest, I will help them solve that crisis. In doing so, I will be helping your universe as well. Lion's expression hardened. In the post-credits scene of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Strange and Clea had entered the Dark Dimension to deal with a world collision. When Lion had watched the film in his previous life as an ordinary viewer, that scene would have only made him eager for what came next. Now that he was actually living inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe, his reaction was far from anticipation. He wanted to curse. If the world collision only involved the movie's main universe colliding with another universe, he might not care. There are countless parallel worlds in Marvel. Many are destroyed all the time. Over a year, the number could rival Australia's kangaroos. If one main universe was eliminated, another might simply take its place. Maybe even 1U66S, the universe he currently inhabited, could become the new main universe. But when had world collision last threatened the Marvel multiverse? The last comparable event in the comics was Secret Wars, 2015. That catastrophe was set off by Wolverine repeatedly altering the timeline, triggering a chain reaction that caused worlds across the multiverse to collide. The result was total annihilation of the comic multiverse. Only a handful of survivors remained until Reed Richards rebuilt reality into the all-new, all-different universe. In effect, it was a multiversal reboot. Lion felt his scalp prickle. This looked dangerously similar. If the world collision Strange was dealing with turned out to be anything like Secret Wars, Lion needed to prepare for the possible end of his universe. The odds might be low, but he had to be ready. He decided not to detain Dormammu any longer with negotiations. It would be best if Dormammu returned to the Dark Dimension quickly, and Strange's team resolved the crisis in the main universe. Lion had no intention of personally joining them. If the crisis was cosmic in scope, his presence wouldn't change anything, and if it wasn't, it wouldn't affect his world anyway. What mattered was getting stronger. If he became powerful enough, it wouldn't matter whether the multiverse or even the omniverse collapsed. He would survive. A sense of urgency, one that had not returned since he'd left the starry sky world, rose in him again. Dormammu, you can go, but besides borrowing infinite energy, I have two more conditions, Lion said, holding up two fingers. Dormammu bristled. Name any conditions, but don't be rude. I will not agree to insolence. First, I don't want your dimensional authority. I want you to help me find an ownerless dimension. Dormammu cut him off. Impossible. Do you know how rare an ownerless dimension is? If one appears, a dimensional demon god will occupy it instantly. Or he would simply fold it into the dark dimension. Then keep an eye out for any news of an ownerless dimension, Lion adjusted. Whether the information is accurate or not, you must tell me until I find one. When Lion broke through to immortality, his inner world would externalize into a divine kingdom, provided he found a space fragment and integrated his inner world into it. In the Marvel cosmos, the best way to do that would be to anchor it to an ownerless dimension and declare himself a dimensional lord. Dormammu sighed with relief. That I can do. It costs me nothing to pass along tidings. And the second condition? He asked. After you return, help Doctor Strange and the others overcome the crisis. If they fail, you must inform me immediately. That's easy enough. Dormammu, hearing the second clause, straightened and resumed his haughty posture. So you plan to intervene if they can't handle it? No, I want to be informed because if it's the kind of collision that destroys countless universes, I need to prepare. Lion was blunt. Dormammu's amusement deepened. No, I want to see the spectacle of two universes colliding and being destroyed. At that moment, Leon felt more cold and unfeeling than anyone who'd gutted fish for 19 years at Stark's house. Even Dormammu thought him a bit merciless. Are you really the Sorcerer Supreme? The darkest Strange I've met would at least feign sympathy. You like talking about Strange, Lion replied. Fine, sign the contract and go find him. He held out his hand. A golden contract of pure energy unfolded, quickly stretching hundreds of meters. Runes crowded across its surface, recording their 3 agreed conditions. At the bottom, in precise script, was the penalty for breach. If Dormammu violated the contract, 90% of his dimensional authority would be forfeited to the Vishanti, the contract's witnesses. Dormammu scoffed. Such a severe penalty, even the Vishanti would be tempted. Sorcerer Supreme, you truly are dark. If it weren't high, they wouldn't bother to enforce it. This contract needs bite, Lion said with a small smile. Humph, whatever you say. Dormammu signed with a burst of dimensional energy. The contract flared white-hot and vanished. Good, the contract is established. Lion waved and withdrew the space stone energy that had been surrounding the small world. The azure tide of power flowed back into him. Dormammu took one long look at Lion, tore open a rent in space, and stepped into the chaotic, kaleidoscopic expanse of the dark dimension. Sorcerer Supreme, he said, pausing in the doorway, tell me your name. Wasn't it on the contract? Lion raised an eyebrow. Do you want a reminder or a threat? Dormammu smirked and adopted his imperious stance. Lion Stark, I await the day you come to the dark dimension. We will have much to discuss. Remember to honor the contract. That's your defeat clause, Lion shot back. He wasn't surprised by Dormammu's theatrics. Dimensional demon gods, holed away in their bleak realms, had long since shed ordinary morality. A little courtesy was a luxury for them. I don't need reminders, Dormammu growled, and then he was gone. Hey, if you miss me, come visit Earth again. Our universe number is 1T9999S. Lion called after him. Dormammu's head dipped at the designation, and he hurried his exit. The tier in space sealed, cutting the dark dimension off from the small world. Lion surveyed the shattered continent spread before him. This is a mess. Time to go. With a thought, he left the world ring and stepped away. In a flash, Leon was back in the Camartage library. He casually undid the enchantments protecting the world ring, slid it into his inner world, and let his mental power fan outward. It passed through the 2 portals and saw the mirror dimension spilled across the 3 sanctums and the scenes inside each. In the London sanctum, Wanda was holding one flank alone while the other sorcerers cheered her on. Hulk sat to the side, chin cupped in his hand, sulking. In the Hong Kong sanctum, Quicksilver and Wong were working together to cut down the demons. The New York sanctum was different. Within its mirror dimension expansion, a Mark armor hundreds of meters tall sat on the ground. Tendrils of mycelium spread from its body and completely sealed the hell passage, even spilling into the other side and ravaging whatever lay beyond. As expected of the Avengers, they'd charged straight into the enemy's lair. That the Hell Realm on the far side tolerated Tony's actions meant its master wasn't present. He must have gone off into the dark dimension to pick a fight, but Dormammu had already returned there. Leon estimated the Hellord who had left would soon be driven back to his own realm by the master of the dark dimension. Leon extended his hand. Space Stone energy swelled within his inner world and surged out, carrying a portion of his power through the portals and down the spatial corridors. It unfurled into the worlds on the other side of the three passages. Then the spatial energy dissipated, and all of Leon's force detonated in a single roar, annihilating countless hellspawn and interdimensional beasts and conveniently collapsing the enemy's spatial conduits. "The war is over, everyone. You've all done well." Leon's voice echoed into the ears of every sorcerer in the three sanctums. Eyes lit up in unison. Whether fighting or watching, they all recognized the Sorcerer Supreme's presence. That he had returned safely meant Dormammu had been driven off. Earth was safe. "I destroyed the spatial passages opened by other dimensions. You can all come home now." The reassurance in his tone carried a healing calm. The teams running the mirror dimension let their spells fall away. Glass and mirror shattered. Reality snapped back into focus. One by one they lined up, stepped through the portal, and returned to Kamartaj. The same sorcerers who had gathered a month ago after the Ancient One's death had come together again. Wong and Mordo shepherded everyone to the training ground to rest. Half an hour later, the sorcerers sat cross-legged on the grass, eyes turned eagerly toward Leon. The Ancient One's passing had left them adrift, like a night that had lost its moonlight, but Leon had shown them by action that the moon had been replaced by a brighter, fiercer sun. They wanted to hear from their new Sorcerer Supreme how he had forced Dormammu away. Instead, Leon reached into his inner world and produced a giant octopus. "From the looks of you, what you want most is to eat," he said with a grin. He set up a barbecue grill as if by habit. "The second Kamartaj barbecue begins now. Anyone want to sing?" Old rule, the first piece of grilled meat goes to whoever sings the best. The sudden change startled everyone, but they quickly recovered and clambered to their feet. "Me! I practiced while I was gone. This time I won't be off-key." For the Kamartaj sorcerers, whose spells took real tolls, nothing healed quite like Leon's cooking after a fight. After a month apart, their songcraft had improved as well. Even Hamir, who'd once performed the Ching Jing Jing, belted out "Rolling Yangtze River Flows East" with that same down-to-earth gusto. He still sounded like he was sending someone to their doom, but he was singing. Amid the laughter and music, Tony and a few others gathered around Leon, eating and talking. "This octopus is phenomenal. Send me a crate," Tony said, holding a several-foot tentacle in one hand. "Me too." Wong raised his hand politely. Banner's soul, floating near Hulk's massive form, nodded eagerly. "And me. Haven't tasted anything yet." Hulk, who rarely came out and now refused to go to sleep, clutched a leg in each hand and chewed with a blissful expression. Pietro raised his hand weakly. "Ah, me too." "All right, all of you can have some. I've got plenty," Leon said. Tony bumped Leon with a grin. "You had a ton of this before and didn't share it," he joked. "Also, if you hadn't closed the passage, I would have fought my way through hell." He was angling for credit. Wanda lifted her chin in reply. "I cleared out all the big octopi myself." Hulk, hearing that, simply pouted and kept gnawing. "Can we please not talk about the tentacle thing? What we're eating now is delicious. That was disgusting." Mordo scowled, still mortified at being tossed around by a monster tentacle. No one paid him much mind. "Humph, I wasn't bad either. Every one of those demons had its throat cut by me," Pietro declared, wiping his nose. Wong cut in modestly, "But I did most of the finishing blows." Everyone clustered around Leon wore the same expression. "Come praise us." Leon obliged. "You all did well. Each of you brought unique skills that dispatched enemies cleanly." He didn't exclude Mordo and Hulk. Hulk maintained his composure much better this time. "That's impressive." And Mordo, dealing with the Eye Demon's minions, was mentally perilous. You held firm. The compliments hit home, especially for Pietro. He pretended to keep eating, but the corners of his mouth betrayed him. Praise from the Sorcerer Supreme, who was also Superman and their younger brother figure, felt like sunlight. Leon shifted tone. But those dimensional creatures and Hellspawn are only the lower tiers. Dimensional demon gods and hell lords are creatures on par with Dormammu or even stronger. To protect Earth, you must get stronger. He wanted everyone to feel the weight of the multiverse threat, not to scare them, but to encourage them to raise their abilities. Those who had never faced dimensional demon gods had no direct sense of the danger. Tony, rubbing his chin, seized the moment. So how strong is Dormammu exactly, and how did you make him leave? Heads turned. Everyone leaned forward to listen. Leon smiled. Telling you a story would be boring. Why don't we watch it together? He sprinkled a bottle of water into the air and, with a flick of magic, shaped it into a floating screen. Then he touched his forehead with one finger, drew out a thin, glowing blue strand of memory, and placed it onto the screen. The device was like a pensieve, an object that could replay extracted memories, and the glowing line unspooled to begin the scene. Chapter 187, Memory Experience, Transition. The liquid screen rippled, slowly resolving into a colorful image. It looked like any ordinary two-dimensional display, ready to play a real-life video. But this was magic. Mere projection of images and sounds would have been too pedestrian. The instant the picture formed, everyone felt a dizzying tug, as if a giant hand had seized their souls and yanked them out of their bodies, shoving them into the screen. It was a rough, disorienting sensation. The masters muttered in annoyance as they came to, but the moment they took in the scene before them, all other feelings fell away. Hundreds of masters floated unsupported in the air a few meters above the ground. Below them, Sorcerer Supreme Leon and the traitor Caecilius were deep in conversation. They had entered Leon's memory. Hulk, not understanding what was happening, roared and, along with a screaming banner, lunged toward Caecilius. Both of them passed right through his body. They could only watch. They could not affect anything inside the memory. Tony circled the view, curiosity evident on his face. This was his first time seeing a celestial place other than Earth. Even the two worlds he had crossed with Leon before had been within Earth's realms. Leon keeps getting better and better toys. Has he been traveling alone between worlds? Tony mused, rubbing his chin. Shh! Pietro snapped at his side, finger raised. Be quiet. I can't hear them. The holographic, memory-like projection was immersive, but the hundreds of masters whispering around the two figures ruined the experience. Realizing the problem, they quieted. On the desolate plain of rolling yellow sand, only the voices of Leon and Caecilius remained. The immersion tightened. Caecilius rattled off the supposed virtues of the dark dimension, even claiming the air there tasted sweeter. The masters felt the words like a fly in their mouths. Filthy. They braced for Leon to give the traitor a harsh reprimand. Instead, to their shock, Leon appeared to side with Caecilius. Voices fell silent. If this footage hadn't been shown to them by Leon himself after his return, many would have burst out lambasting him. Your Majesty, your followers were ready to fight to the death. Why did you surrender? Thankfully, the story soon took another turn. The plot moved like a thriller. Caecilius and his followers summoned Dormammu and were mercilessly consumed by the dark dimension. Then Leon tried to negotiate, and that only enraged Dormammu. The crowd watched, riveted. Dormammu's true form was unlike anything they'd imagined. His head alone rose like a small mountain. His casual aura carried the suffocating presence of death itself. Seeing the Sorcerer Supreme stand opposite such a being felt like watching Don Quixote ride a donkey toward a windmill. The masters, fully in Leon's point of view, felt their legs go weak. The donkey that should have charged the windmill seemed to collapse by the roadside. Tony clenched his trembling fists until his nails bit his palms. Fear prickled through him, but harder was an anxious fury. What sort of enemy had Leon faced alone? A hunger for power and a sense of impending crisis flared inside him. He knew Leon had survived in the end, but the scene planted a seed. Wanda, sitting not far from him and the most powerful among them, was no steadier. In the face of Dormammu, she felt unable even to cast a spell. Yet Leon, confronted by the enormous, flame-wreathed lord, met him with a frown and calm resolve. He raised the Seraphim shield and called upon Hoggoth's ancient spells to block lethal attacks. Wanda felt the sheer gulf between her own abilities and Leon's. Wong, practical and blunt, slapped his thigh in admiration. This is the Sorcerer Supreme. This is the Sorcerer Supreme. Leon's stooped, determined back was imprinted in everyone's minds. But the thrill didn't last. After a few exchanges, Leon did something that reignited Dormammu's rage so completely that the entity stepped out of the dark dimension into their world in full force. They were stunned again. The Sorcerer Supreme was powerful, but his mouth was dangerous. Why provoke Dormammu into crossing dimensions in his true form? If they could, many wished they could travel back and clamp his mouth shut. In the memory, Dormammu and Leon began talking about the Time Stone and a being called Thanos. Wanda frowned and turned to Tony. What is the Time Stone? Leon used the Space Stone when he awakened Pietro's and my abilities. Is it something like that? And who is Thanos? What's annihilation? The names felt exotic and ominous to Wanda. She assumed Tony and the others already knew the answers from past world-saving battles. Tony's mind, however, was a blank on those points. He looked to Wong and Mordo for help. The two masters exchanged glances. Wong answered first. Thanos is a warlord in the universe. The Time Stone is one of the Infinity Stones, powerful artifacts that control aspects of existence. He explained as best he could, then sheepishly added, but when the Time Stone was destroyed, or what they mean by annihilation, I don't know. Mordo frowned. That can't be right. The Time Stone is or was in the Eye of Agamotto. Did Leon destroy that treasure when he took office? Wanda absorbed this with growing confusion. The Elder Masters didn't know much either. Pietro, impatient, refocused everyone. Lower your voices. We'll find out if we keep watching. He stared at Leon, irritated by the chatter. They turned back to the scene, and their hearts sank. Dormammu struck Leon so hard he was hurled away. Then the many calamities followed. Storms of earth, wind, water, and fire, even tidal-like surges of raw energy that scrubbed the surface of the world. The memory bloomed into an apocalypse. Hundreds of observers hung silent in midair, minds numbed by the scale of devastation. How could Leon possibly win? A voice, small and shaking, broke the silence. The Sorcerer Supreme we just watched, could he be a ghost? After a pause, another voice muttered, half to himself. Then the octopus we ate, was that just a dying hallucination? Self-doubt rippled through the masters. Some even checked frantically that they were still alive. Chapter 2. In memory, he appears before people. Transition. Their worry only eased a little until revered Lion reappeared. They watched his cape-fluttering figure emerge from roaring winds and a flame-entwined abyss, completely unharmed. The sorcerers let out a collective sigh of relief, and then everything they thought they knew was shattered. First, Dormammu attacked relentlessly, but Lion barely moved. He mocked the dimensional demon for a few moments, then felled him with a single punch. Then he did the unthinkable. He blew up the planet beneath his feet, a world no smaller than Earth. The planet's exploding fires swallowed them like an ocean. All they could see were blinding flames and a rain of shattered rock. Still, the image burned into their minds was Lion's punch that destroyed a planet. Is this our Sorcerer Supreme? Someone murmured, dazed. He is, right? Is the Ancient One that strong? Another asked. No, I don't think so. If the Ancient One had come, she'd probably have been killed with one punch from Lion, someone else said. But is this even magic? Another asked. Yes, it has to be. Isn't that how we usually fight? They exchanged stunned whispers. Tony and the others were barely less shocked. Holy cow, is that really Lion? Tony gaped. What happened to him? How can he blow up a planet now? Pietro watched Lion's silhouette in the blaze, his eyes bright with something like worship. His expression made it clear. A true man should be like this. Wanda stood frozen too, staring at Dormammu as he suffered under Lion's onslaught. A moment ago, she'd felt no desire to resist the dimensional demon. Now he seemed suddenly small and pathetic. Maybe it was Lion's presence, a war god in a dark battlesuit that hugged every muscle, that made everyone feel secure. Each contracted muscle, each explosion of strength, was a violent aesthetic. Wanda found herself thinking Pietro had been right. Lion's physique was astonishing, rivaling any Renaissance sculpture. When Lion got serious, the fight with Dormammu played out like a Hollywood blockbuster. Light waves erupted back and forth, repeatedly shattering the landscape. Then it devolved into vicious hand-to-hand combat. Lion sent Dormammu flying again and again, even summoning a giant only to make it self-destruct. The sheer magnitude of power pushed the watching sorcerer's emotions to the limit. Then the shared vision ended. Everyone's consciousness snapped back to reality, and an awkward silence hung for several minutes. They were still reeling. The memory had been too intense, a roller coaster of emotions. The finale in particular had their hearts pounding, as if they themselves had beat Dormammu brutally, and they kept savoring the memory. Lion waited a few minutes, then coughed lightly to pull them back. Don't just stand there. You've all seen the process. Eat the barbecue before it gets cold, or the taste will be ruined. His voice jerked them out of the trance like a rope. Hundreds of eyes turned to him, and where there had been respect and trust now blazed adoration and worship. Even Hulk stared with wide, bell-like eyes, comparing Lion's arm to his own and finding it impossible to reconcile how the slight that Lion could be stronger than him. Why are you all staring? Eat! Lion held up 2 skewers of grilled octopus. Instead, everyone dropped their skewers and surged toward him. Revered Lion, I don't know what to say. You're incredible. You beat something like Dormammu with your own hands. With you, we won't have to worry about dimensional demon gods anymore. Our Earth can be the strongest of the 9 realms now. Revered Leon, what magic did you use to strengthen your body? I need to learn it. He was swarmed. One at a time. Don't push. If you push again, back to your sanctums you go, he warned, but he couldn't hide a small, pleased smile. A long, dormant joy of showing off rose in him. What good is strength but to feel it, protect others, and yes, show off a little? Leon had come back from Starry Sky World with a better mindset, but a little exhibitionism felt harmless. That didn't stop certain sorcerers, ones who'd learned the new magic system, from getting handsy. Hey, whose hand just touched my chest? Cat-eared one, I've seen you before, Lion barked. And you, Minotaur, I've tolerated you. It's one thing to touch my biceps, but pinching and twisting? Cut it out. These sorcerers took advantage of the chaos to grope him. Lion dispatched them with firm knocks on the head, sending them sulking off to a corner, with swelling bumps like ping-pong balls. The rest formed a cautious circle and started asking questions. The impromptu Q&A turned into a lecture. Lion spoke for 2 hours, explaining everything from borrowing energy to the fundamentals of magic. The sorcerers left richer in knowledge and wearing satisfied smiles. As night fell, the 3 sanctum sorcerers returned to their homes, and the Camartage contingent went back to their routines. This was their life. When a crisis came, they fixed it. When it was over, they returned to ordinary days, hidden beneath the world's prosperity. No one would guess a group of robed figures had just averted a world-ending catastrophe here. But this time, things were different. The departing sorcerers would carry the name of Sorcerer Supreme Revered Lion and his rather exaggerated achievements throughout the magical community. When the sorcerers were gone, Tony and the others finally got a chance to talk with Lion in private. All right, the dimensional war's over for now. Everyone can go home, Lion said. He took out several vials that recorded combat memories and handed them to Mordo. Mordo, toss these memory potions into the invading hells. Let them see for themselves. Mordo blinked, then straightened with the dignity of Camartage's diplomat. Is it to deter them? I understand. After seeing Lion beat Dormammu, Mordo felt a surge of pride. He even suggested, should I throw one into the Eye Demon's dimension as well? Lion gave him a look. Forget the Eye Demon. He generally doesn't invade Earth. It would be irrational to provoke him. Some things, the Thulu-like entities of the multiverse, are better left unprovoked. After he finished speaking, he looked at Wang, who was standing nearby. Also, even though Dormammu promised that Camartage can borrow his power without limit going forward, he said, you two still need to warn the other sorcerers not to use the Dark Dimension's power except in the most critical moments. Even if there's no fee to pay, that kind of power naturally has a corrupting effect on the mind, Leon added. I don't want to come back one day and find nothing but fanatical madmen. Mordo nodded gravely. With Caecilius as a negative example, I think the sorcerers will be cautious. Rest assured, I will keep a close watch on them. Wang's right, Wang agreed. Not many people would willingly use Dormammu's magic. He pointed teasingly at the library. It's not like everybody's like you, daring enough to read every forbidden book on the shelves, right? Leon squinted. Wang, you're at it again. Always bringing up me and forbidden books. If anyone's to blame, blame the Ancient One. She allowed it. At the mention of the Ancient One, Wang and Mordo both fell a little quiet, their expressions wistful. The Ancient One, Sorcerer Supreme. Mordo sighed with feeling. I wonder how she's doing with the Vishanti. There was an important caveat when borrowing Dormammu's power. The souls of Kamartaj's sorcerers would return to the Vishanti after death. The Ancient One, however, had been an exception. Only Leon knew she had used Dark Dimension energy secretly. In the eyes of the other sorcerers, she still stood as a saintly, powerful figure. Actually, Leon said, her soul didn't go to the Vishanti. She went to find eternity. She's comfortable there. At least she doesn't have to worry about protecting Earth anymore. Maybe she's happier than the two of you living mortals. Eternity? Wang and Mordo were surprised, but it made sense, as befits the Ancient One. A person as powerful as the Ancient One should follow something greater, Leon said. From what you're saying, the previous Sorcerer Supreme was extraordinarily strong, Tony said. Of course, she was the Venerable who defended Kamartaj for centuries, Mordo said, drawing Tony in as he reminisced. Wang added details as Mordo described the Ancient One's long tenure. Leon shook his head and glanced at Banner. After the barbecue feast, after all the octopus had been devoured, Hulk had crashed into a deep sleep and Banner had regained control, looking sheepish and exhausted. His brows drooped, his expression was awkward and a little regretful. Leon put a hand on Pietro's shoulder. Banner, do you want to come back to New York with us? You've learned astral projection. You've met your initial goal. Banner shook his head. No, my skill's still not good enough. I need to stay and keep training. And Kamartaj's magical animal breeding base is still under construction. I should keep an eye on it. What about Betty? Don't you miss her? Leon asked. Banner scratched his head, awkward. Could I bring Betty over? She's a biologist. She'd love those little creatures. You can talk to Wang and Mordo about that. They're the chief stewards here now. Leon readily shirked any duties that would have fallen to a full Sorcerer Supreme, then turned with a half-smile to the Maximov siblings. By the way, haven't you two had enough already? On his chest, two hands of different tones were stroking and probing. Wanda let out a low, animalistic noise and immediately pulled her hands back when Leon turned his head. Her pale face flushed, and she looked at the floor in sudden shyness. Pietro, however, grinned widely, his hands still on Leon. As expected of Superman, your muscles are amazing, Pietro cheered, giving a thumbs up. After seeing the battle memories, Leon had risen in Pietro's estimation back to idol status. When the distance closed, Pietro couldn't help himself. He reached out to feel Leon's powerful muscles, imagining them on his own body one day. He even egged Wanda on. Pietro's grin flashed white teeth. His bright eyes held a strange light. Under that stare, Leon felt not flattered, but repulsed. Pietro, Leon warned, if you look at me with those groundhog eyes again, I'll turn you into a real groundhog. If you want muscles, go home and work for them. He slapped Pietro, sending him spinning in the air for 3.5 turns before he crashed to the ground, landing on his rear in a daze. Leon opened a portal with a finger, grabbed Pietro by the collar, and tossed him through. Then he looked at the stunned Wanda. Your apartment is on the other side. Are you walking, or do you want me to send you too? Wanda trembled. I'll walk myself. She darted through the portal like a rabbit, then turned back once as Leon waved. You two did well today. Get some sleep. In 2 hours you have school. Don't skip class. He closed the portal. Faint wailing about school came from the other side. Although they were the same age as Leon and attended the same university, their pressure at school was another world away. School, what a nostalgic word, Banner said, hands on his hips, smiling like a professor. If you're nostalgic, you can go back, Leon said. I want Wang to build a magic academy eventually, to create a systematic sorcerer training program. You'll have another chance. Banner scratched his head. Sounds good. After returning from Hogwarts, Wang always felt something was missing here. He even wanted a train like Hogwarts. He'll love that job, Leon said. Leon sent the Men in Black, the agents who had watched the big show and left full and satisfied, back to New York first. Then he walked over to Tony and the others, who were chatting happily. Mordo had moved from telling Ancient One stories to explaining dimensional demon gods in excruciating detail, how terrifying each demon god was, and how none had ever gotten the upper hand against the Ancient One. Tony's eyes flitted about, wondering where Leon's head was at. Ancient One's story spans centuries. We can't cover it all now. It's time to go, Tony. You've got Avengers work today. Leon interrupted Mordo's rambling and called Tony to leave with him. Mordo, you and Wong keep the sanctum secure and set up video calls. Report your work to Jarvis in 2 days, he instructed before stepping into the portal. Time passed quickly. A new day had come. Leon woke in the embrace of a fair arm and got out of bed. In the dining room, Shirley had already prepared breakfast and was setting the table. "Good morning, Shirley," he said. "Brother Leon, you're awake," Shirley chirped, swinging her legs from the chair. "Where are Sister Natasha and Yelena?" "They probably won't be going into the company today," Leon said as he sat down. "Also, I didn't wake up. I finished my cultivation." "Okay, but if the sisters can't go to work, what about the company?" "Let Jarvis handle it as usual," Leon said. Chapter 190, Zhang Wanda's Nightmare Consultation. After Jarvis became a sentient life form, the advantages were obvious. He grew smarter and could appear anywhere on the network, bringing massive computing power from any corner. The drawback, however, was that he developed emotions and a sense of gender identity, and with that came the need for privacy. Tony solved that by personally building a huge underground base in the Stark Industries Industrial Park. There he installed the latest planet-scale computer he had built recently, an evolution of the Starry Sky World's optical computer, to serve as Jarvis's core. The Stark mansion and Leon's apartment no longer hosted Jarvis's subroutines. Now he only manifested from the network when called. As Leon finished speaking, a loading bar flickered on the projection panel by the dining table. Seconds later, a door formed in the projection, and Jarvis, in a butler's uniform, pushed it open with a ceremonious bow. "At your service, young Master Leon," Jarvis intoned. "Wow!" Shirley clapped. "Every time Uncle Jarvis appears, it feels like living in a fairy tale mansion. If Miss Shirley wishes, young Master Leon would certainly buy her an estate," Jarvis said, placing his right hand over his chest. Shirley waved him off. "Oh no, an estate would be too big. It'd be hard to see, Brother Leon." She pouted. Leon laughed and ruffled her hair. "You little rascal, now you're comparing things." "Are you not going to go back up and support your little friends today?" Shirley asked. "They're not being picked on anymore. Those kids are terrified of me now." "No need," she said, then held up her fork. "But Peter's aunt wants to visit to thank us." "Of course she can," Leon nodded, "but you'll have to talk to your older sisters about the time before you reply to Peter." A month had passed since the battle with Dormammu. Shirley had enrolled at Midtown High, and this whole story started on her first day. On the way home, she'd seen a few boys bullying another kid in an alley and had jumped off the bus to intervene. After scattering the bullies, she learned the smaller boy's name was Peter Parker, a new first grader who'd been taunted because only his aunt had come to enroll him. Shirley enjoyed the gratitude. It felt like purpose. Later, she even bragged that she'd found her calling: protect the weak, even if that meant a middle schooler beating up elementary school delinquents. A week later, the school called Tony. Shirley had started a huge after-school brawl by teaching several troublemakers a lesson. Dozens of kids were crying. Tony appeared at the principal's office more stunned than angry. He hadn't expected his ward to be so unconcerned about consequences. "Did Leon tell you to hit those kids?" he asked. Shirley hunched and shook her head. "I want to be a hero like you guys. I want to protect the weak." Tony was speechless for a moment. Then he slapped a blank check on the desk with a note. "Fill in any amount," and took Shirley away. From that day on, she became known around Queens as the kingpin of the local schools. Word reached Hell's Kitchen. Kingpin even paid someone to investigate Shirley. That night, a few men in black broke his leg and left him with one chilling warning: if you investigate again, next time Superman will come for you. Kingpin didn't sleep for a month. Shirley, meanwhile, went to school every day and kept stopping bullies with complete delight. After breakfast, Leon cast a quick cleaning spell, and the dishes sparkled. Shirley was used to such things now. Leon was omnipotent in her eyes. "I'm off to school," she announced, bounding out the door. Make sure you take the school bus properly. Don't jump out the window again. Leon watched her go, then looked toward his bedroom. Through the wall, he could see the Natasha sisters sleeping, their hair splayed on pillows, sunlight catching their lashes yet unable to rouse them. He shook his head. They're terrible at mornings, but they love to play. Since the Dimension War ended, the sisters had been lively and always tried to exhaust him. 2 little black widows were hardly a drain on him. They only added to the noise. He checked the time. It was not yet 8. Wanda had asked to take the day off to come get help with her dreams, so Leon thought it would be a while before she arrived. I can train a bit more, he muttered, settled on the sofa, and closed his eyes. Inside his inner world, the ring containing 100,000 suns flowed with blinding light. Every second under that light, his power climbed. Half an hour later, the doorbell woke him. When he opened the door, Wanda stood in the hallway alone. She wore a red dress, white heels, and light makeup, like a blooming, captivating rose. Leon noted she'd come early. Shirley already left, he said, guiding her into the living room. If I'd left any later, Pietro would have woken up, Wanda explained as they sat. If he wakes up, he'll make a fuss and want to come too. Leon opened the fridge. What would you like to drink? Do you have milk? Warm, if possible, Wanda replied, fingers pressed to her thighs. Even after many visits, she still felt nervous being alone with Leon. No problem. Hot milk coming up. Leon murmured a spell. The milk warmed, poured into a cup, and floated across to Wanda. She accepted it with a grateful smile and sipped. You ready to start? Leon asked. Wanda nodded slowly. Last night, I dreamed of that woman again. Since her chaos magic woke, Wanda had been plagued by dreams almost every night. In them, she was versions of herself from other worlds. Some were mutants, some had massacred Kamartaj, some plotted vengeance against Tony Stark at a Hydra base. The nightmares made her anxious. On Pietro's suggestion, she'd come to consult the omnipotent Leon. He had been analyzing the root of her dreams and using soothing spells to calm her mind. This consultation had been going on for over half a month. Chapter 191, Jong Wanda's psychological counseling is in progress. Half a month had passed. Wanda had already become familiar with everyone in the apartment, but the first meetings had not been smooth. The first time she saw little Shirley and the disheveled sisters, Natasha and the others, in Leon's home, their loose pajamas and messy hair shook her sheltered heart. For a moment, she half wondered if Shirley was some adolescent mistake of Leon's. Her gaze drifted over them in a daze, and she left with a stunned, apologetic smile she could hardly manage. Sorry to disturb you, she whispered, and walked away with an inexplicable heaviness on her shoulders. A few days later, though, Wanda found herself back at the apartment. She couldn't help it. Night after night, the nightmares kept coming. They were so vivid and relentless, they were wearing her down. The dreams felt like someone else's life forced into her mind, almost entirely combat, with no mundane moments at all. In them, her eyes were red with blood. Her vision was drenched in scarlet. Magic answered her command like a demon risen from a red abyss, and a single wave of her hand could take a life. Wanda, who had only ever killed livestock and dimensional creatures before, couldn't accept such images. Each morning, she woke with the sensation of time being out of joint. She needed someone to confide in, someone like Leon who could soothe the mind with his magic. Otherwise, she felt she might lose her grip on sanity. She had told Pietro about the dreams. Pietro had buried his face in his hands and answered in a panic. No, one sister is trouble enough. Please don't give me more. After Wanda shoved his head into the sofa cushion, she had no choice but to go to Leon again. This went on for half a month. By now, she knew Natasha and the others better, and she understood that Shirley was a poor girl Leon had taken in. Learning Shirley's tragic background eased something in Wanda. The weight she'd carried seemed to lift a little. This time the dream was different, Wanda said, pressing slender fingers to her temples. She looked exhausted. It was very long. I can still remember fragments. In the dream, she, another me, destroyed all the Darkhold across the multiverse and died when Mount Wundagore collapsed. And, Wanda paused, then lifted her hand. I learned a lot of her magic again. Only this time it seems most of it was from the Darkhold. As she spoke, a pulse of scarlet energy ran along her fingertips. The color deepened like blood drying, and the tips of her fingers darkened to an ashen black. "Stop!" Leon's pupils narrowed. He immediately cast a ward to halt her, grabbed her hand, and pushed his own gene energy out to drive the dark current from her fingers. Even the Wanda in your dream was mentally affected by using Darkhold magic, and you, a novice, dare to imitate her. He scolded her sharply. When you use magic, you must respect taboos, especially any that touch the mind or the laws of nature. Those kinds of magics are dangerous. Handle them with extreme caution. He felt ridiculous, sounding like Wong warning others about forbidden arts, but the warning was necessary. Wanda looked up at him with a soft, almost sheepish expression, her fingers resting in his palm like a lamb seeking comfort. Leon's attention, however, had shifted. Above Wanda's head, a crimson crown hovered, ethereal and semi-transparent. You could see the wall through it as if it were an illusion. But Leon knew what it meant. If that crown solidified, she would have fully taken on the mantle of the Scarlet Witch, able to alter reality itself within her perceived range. In the main universe in the movies, that was the point where the other Wanda paid the ultimate price, the deaths of everyone she loved. And this Wanda, who had only been dreaming for half a month, was already approaching that level. Her rate of development was even faster than when Leon had gone to the Starry Sky world. "What's wrong?" Wanda blinked, confused. She touched the top of her head. "Is there something on me?" Leon covered his face with one hand. "No, just a little envy." "Envy?" Wanda asked, puzzled. "What do you mean? We need to go over this again." Leon eased her back onto a chair, placed his index finger lightly on her forehead, and released a touch of mind magic to steady her. Then he spoke slowly and clearly. "Dreams like yours are windows into other versions of ourselves in parallel universes. The Wandas you see in those dreams are your counterparts. In most cases, the other Wandas awakened because of the Mind Stone. You awakened because of the Space Stone. None of the other Wandas ever dreamt of their counterparts. Only you have that. And the dreams are almost entirely combat scenes. After a dream ends, the techniques and magic used by that other Wanda can transfer to you." "That's right." Wanda nodded, her eyes drifting half-closed as Leon's calming magic settled over her. She relaxed, occasionally furrowing her brow or leaning back as if he were actually massaging her shoulders. "Everything may trace back to the Space Stone," Leon continued. "Chaos magic is innate to every Wanda. A stone only acts like a key to unlock the potential. The raw intensity of chaos magic doesn't change. What changes is the user's skill and technique. The more refined your skill, the more profound your casting methods, and the stronger the chaos magic you can unleash." "You said the Wandas awakened by the Mind Stone are better at mind-related uses of chaos magic," Leon went on. "I think the Mind Stone makes them develop applications that touch the mind more readily. The Space Stone gave you something different, an ability to communicate with and learn from your counterparts in other worlds through dreams. That's an application of chaos magic in the spatial aspect." Wanda opened her eyes, worry returning to her voice. "So I'll always be dreaming about other versions of myself? I don't care about their lives, and constantly having these dreams is making me feel weak." "Don't think like that." Leon tapped her forehead lightly. "Chaos magic isn't an inconvenience. It belongs to you. Constant dreaming only proves your control over it is weak, because you haven't tried to control it." He finished the calming spell and rose. "All right, your problem is clearer now. You can learn how to control and cast chaos magic from those other Wandas. Go back and practice. The more you practice, the better you'll control your dreams, but under no circumstances practice Darkhold magic." Wanda lingered by the door, reluctant to leave. "If I still can't control chaos magic, will I have to rely on your mind magic to ease my nightmares? Can I come back next time?" Leon's face darkened. "No, don't you dare be lazy. If you still have nightmares next week, I'll give you dreams within dreams, by force, if I have to." Chapter 192, Tony's Discovery. After Wanda left, Leon sank back onto the sofa and resumed his cultivation. This had been his routine for the past month. Apart from occasionally assigning tasks to employees across various departments and paying the Natasha sisters every night, he spent almost all his time immersed in training. The small, selfish reason he'd been spending time counseling Wanda, he found her attractive, was insignificant compared to the greater motive, Wanda's extraordinary potential. Helping her now was an investment in his future. In Leon's eyes, Wanda was the most unusual of the Marvel heroes. Her powers were unique, and so was her temperament. If Tony could be described as a mortal who could rival a god, and Star-Lord as a god who could live like a mortal, then Wanda was a mortal with a mortal heart wielding divine power. From revenge to loss to sacrifice, she remained fundamentally an ordinary Sokovian girl who wanted a stable life. Each leap she took in strength had been born of tragedy. She didn't act out of a strong personal will so much as out of the responsibilities that came with her abilities, like Spider-Man after Uncle Ben. Deep down, she craved peace. If offered a choice between chaos magic and a secure, happy life with her family, she'd take the latter without hesitation. Someone like Wanda would repay any kindness 100-fold, and Leon could find no reason to refuse her. "Wanda, I hope she really polishes her chaos magic when she goes back," he murmured. He reclined on the sofa, expecting another morning of quiet cultivation. Then the doorbell rang. The apartment door opened automatically. Tony had permission to come and go as he pleased. "Why are you here?" Leon frowned. "Why can't I be here?" Tony lowered his sunglasses and peered over the rim. "What's with that face? Aren't you happy to see me? Or has our Clark moved to the big city and started looking down on his old farm buddy?" "I'm cultivating right now. Jarvis could have told me if something's up. Can't I just drop by to see you?" Tony clutched his chest melodramatically. Leon raised an eyebrow. After the dimensional war, not only had Wanda developed nightmares and needed counseling, Tony himself had been plagued by mild anxiety for some unknown reason. When he couldn't sit still at Avengers Tower, he'd come here, calm himself by seeing Leon, then rush back to work. The problem had eased after he'd helped little Shirley resolve a school fight and been touched by something she said, but anxiety still flared up. When anxious, Tony tinkered with odd projects. Jarvis had told Leon Tony was obsessively studying the starry sky world's optical computer notes to build a starship, not a conventional escape vessel, but a warship Noah's Ark that could equip Earth with planet-destroying cannons to take a dimensional demon god down with it. The project stalled over two issues: incomplete technological understanding and a shortage of high-strength metals. Leon had pointed towards Wakanda as a solution. Tony had sent Hawkeye to investigate. Hawkeye had been out of contact for 3 days. Leon suspected that was why Tony had come. "Hawkeye found anything?" Leon asked. "He found what he was sent for," Tony said, making himself comfortable and opening the wine cabinet. Leon didn't drink. Tony had stocked the cabinet with his favorites. He popped a bottle of Napoleon cognac and poured himself a glass. "Problem is, Wakanda doesn't want to let him go." "They're holding him?" Leon frowned. "They're not the kind to kill a foreign agent, especially an internationally known Avenger, but they're not releasing him either. They're treating this as though they sunk Hawkeye into the Indian Ocean." Tony took a rough sip and set the bottle aside. They underestimated him. The moment he resurfaced, he transmitted the intel. "What is it?" Leon asked. Tony tasted the cognac, recorked the bottle, then smiled. "Vibranium, a mountain of it." Leon shrugged casually. "I told you." Tony's eyes widened. "You knew? Why didn't you tell me?" "Even if I'd told you, you'd still have to negotiate with Wakanda," Leon said. "With Hawkeye detained, it's actually an easier entry point for diplomatic talks." "Still, should have been in the loop," Tony muttered. "Fine, I know the situation. You can leave now." He rose as Leon waved him off. "All right, I'll go." "Wait." Tony froze, frowning. "That's not why I came." Leon relaxed back. "Then what is it? Don't make me guess." He eased his super hearing a fraction and listened through feet-in-the-hallway silence. His face tightened. "You found Captain America under the ice at the North Pole? And Coulson's running the recovery?" Tony blinked, then adjusted his sunglasses. "I'm not here about Cap either." Leon raised his hands. "Fine, tell me. Satisfy your need to show off." Tony's expression grew serious. "Remember those green-skinned aliens Fury mentioned when we dismantled Hydra? The Skrulls?" Leon sat up straight. "The ones we suspected of infiltrating positions of power? Half a month ago, I had the men in black start collecting evidence, planning to dismantle SWO or D as part of the operation." Tony's face darkened. Jarvis found proof someone in the agency was replaced. Worse, there was an attempted system breach aimed at stealing your data. Leon's eyebrows rose. Jarvis detected hacking attempts? Someone tried to rip your files out of their servers. Tony said bluntly. So no, we don't have clean hands here. And when did you start this Men in Black sweep without telling me? Isn't SUD a space agency? Why are you dismantling it? And why didn't you tell me you were doing something this big? Leon's cool expression met Tony's simmering fury. Outside the quiet apartment, uneasy threads were beginning to pull through the world. Wakanda's vibranium, Hawkeye imprisoned, Skrulls bluffing their way into trusted ranks. And someone was trying to steal the one man who knew too much. Tony's visit had been meant to be casual. It had turned into the first buckle in a chain that would tighten fast. Chapter 193, Nick Fury's Plan. Didn't you set that up yourself? Tony asked. You said the Avengers would handle Earth and the Men in Black would handle extraterrestrial matters, Leon replied. So it's fine if the Men in Black act on their own, right? Tony set the wine bottle on the table. Are you sure it's fine? You don't even like sharing a bit of fun with your older brother anymore. Maybe I should go back to the farm in Kansas and harvest wheat. You're joking again. Can you ever be serious? Leon rubbed his forehead. You said the Skrull were collecting information on me? Yes, Tony nodded. But I haven't heard anything about it. Leon frowned. Then they must be planning something, or Fury is investigating me. Even when suppressed, Leon's superhearing could still pick up information about himself. He'd never heard of anyone stealing his data from the Avengers. They're wary of you, Tony said. They don't even mention your name. Of course you wouldn't hear it. Everyone in the world knows you can see through anything except lead, and your superhearing reaches across the globe, Leon said. So anyone plotting against you would have to guard against your abilities. Maybe you're a Voldemort among the Skrull, referred to as you-know-who. Tony sat down beside him and put an arm around his shoulder. Don't worry, I know how useless your vision and hearing are when people take precautions. So Jarvis and I have already started investigating. We'll have results soon, Tony added. Leon shook his head. Actually, my weakness to lead is gone. Are you serious? Tony blinked. 2 days ago, I destroyed several military bases that had lead-lined compartments and were running covert operations against me, Leon said. Those people, and whoever backed them, are no longer a problem. You should have noticed a few empty Senate seats 2 days ago. That was part of it, Leon continued. Of course, I didn't touch other places that use lead to protect legitimate scientific secrecy. People still need some privacy. You're generous, Tony said dryly. But when did you lose that lead weakness? You've been getting stronger on your own again. It's the changes from the starry sky world, Leon said. I even brought you something when I came back. I didn't hide it from you. Tony's eyes widened as he finally made the connection. He'd been studying the starry sky world's optical computer obsessively, updating his own knowledge, absorbing unfamiliar technologies. The optical computer didn't present a complete scientific system, but the weapons tech and individual power it described were staggering. Tony had been deep in those studies. He believed no one in the world understood that realm's technology better than he did, not even Leon. While Tony thought that, Leon had already found the answers with his super senses. It was Fury, he said, looking away from the window. He plans everything. The Black Egg? Tony asked. Leon nodded. He built a lead-lined room on the S-Shield space station. He put all the data about me in there. My identity, my history, personality analyses, behavior predictions. Huh, Tony said. So he knows you better than I do now. He called it the New Avengers Initiative, Leon went on. He had the Skrull infiltrate the Avengers to collect more of my combat data. He wants to recruit me. That man has quite the imagination. Leon laid out everything Fury had sealed away in that lead room. Lead has no effect on me now? Tony exclaimed. Good thing you're not a detective. Every investigator would be out of a job. He stood up, pacing. Fury definitely has issues. No wonder some of his old people are still in contact with him. Looks like they're gearing up for a new Avengers. But you said one thing wrong, Leon, Tony added. I absolutely understand you better than he does. Tony pointed his finger dramatically. Just data, that's all. I know you so well that if you lift a finger, I'll know whether you plan to pick your nose or pick your teeth." Leon rolled his eyes and poked Tony's chest with one finger. The next instant, a massive force shoved Tony back into the sofa. Only his head stuck out, dazed. "Sorry," Leon said. "It wasn't picking your nose or your teeth. I was actually planning to poke you to death with one finger." Leon got to his feet and waved. "Figure out how to get out yourself. I'm heading to the airborne base to arrange the girls' next moves." The plan to root out the scroll had been designed to proceed slowly, but with Fury already in motion, it was better to get him off the space station sooner. "Wait, why are you planning to destroy SWRD?" Tony shouted from the couch, neck craned. Leon paused at the doorway. SWRD is the organization Maria, formerly a U.S. Air Force pilot, established with Fury's help to handle interstellar disputes. Its members include humans and Skrull, and S-Shield space station serves as their base. They're subordinate to a security council and are very secretive, but their powers are actually less than S-Shield's. Now Fury's holed up on the S-Shield station. He'll probably recruit unemployed former S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and pump up SWRD's power. You can see the danger. He called into the inner room. "How much longer are you two going to eavesdrop? Time to move." The door opened, and the fully armed Natasha sisters walked out, both in black combat suits. They exchanged a gesture with Tony and followed Leon out. They'd been listening from inside, waiting for the signal. Once the apartment door closed with a heavy thud, Tony was left half buried in the sofa. "SWRD, S-Shield space station," he mumbled. "Fury, how many backup plans does he have?" 5 days later, on a New York morning, a video suddenly topped the front pages of major news portals. The clip opened with a person in pitch-black armor standing before a screen, speaking without any theatrics. "Our world has suffered a covert invasion by an extraterrestrial force." There was no melodrama, no long preamble. The armored figure, its voice surprisingly female, laid out evidence calmly and directly. Almost everyone who clicked recognized the figure at once as an operative of the Men in Black. Chapter 194. The Skrulls. Just 1 month earlier, swarms of girls in black suits had suddenly appeared across the globe. They fought crime and rescued civilians in cities everywhere. They called themselves the Men in Black, and their names spread worldwide. Most people remembered they'd first shown up during the Hydra War a few months before. One of the 3 airborne aircraft carriers had been taken down in that conflict, and the Men in Black had been involved in the encirclement and suppression of Hydra. After that, however, they vanished. Their whereabouts were a mystery. Some speculated they were survivors of Hydra's persecution, banding together like avenging goddesses and then returning to normal lives once their vengeance was done. Others insisted they were Tony Stark's all-female unit, only appearing when Iron Man needed them, otherwise working as corporate elites or Stark Industries PR. This theory had the most followers. Countless men online pounded their chests in jealous outrage at the thought of Iron Man's squad. All the speculation calmed down after a later hearing when Iron Man, Liv, declared that the Men in Black were all subordinates of Superman. The wild theories faded away. Over time, those girls who no longer appeared drifted out of public memory. Then, a month ago, the Men in Black re-emerged across the world. In truth, it was Yelena, after getting Leon's permission, starting to expand the Men in Black brand. The dormant memories of netizens awakened. People once again remembered those long-legged, lithe-waisted heroines. This time, everyone knew they reported to Superman, so supporters hailed them as Superman's Black Sisters, sent to redeem humanity. Opponents claimed their return was the first step towards Superman's dictatorship. The two sides argued endlessly online. Open any web page and the comment sections were full of the same fights. According to Shirley, even if she clicked on a Snow White video during those days, the comments twisted into allegory. Someone would liken the queen who wanted to kill the princess to Superman. Then Superman's supporters would counter that the prince was actually Superman. The queen was Hydra, and the princess had long been dead. The debates were ridiculous and relentless, until the superhero company released a film called Men in Black. The movie explained who the Men in Black were and why they existed. A group of pitiable girls saved by Superman, their creed summarized as "nothing is true, everything is permitted." It began with the destruction of the Red Room by Superman and Iron Man and traced the girl's tragic struggle, redemption, and final role in defeating Hydra. The film's promotional period was short, but within a week, its box office overtook another superhero company release, The Dark Knight Batman. Superhero Company had been nurturing local IPs while also licensing DC properties, but local heroes were more relatable, and only Superman remained truly popular in the DC lineup. Men in Black pushed the girls fully into public view. When the Portal site's homepage video started playing, a figure cloaked in black armor filled the screen. Almost every netizen recognized her. They knew she spoke for Superman, so they didn't immediately reject the extraordinary claim at the video's start. As the Men in Black presented one piece of evidence after another, refutation became impossible because the evidence was damning. Earth had indeed been infiltrated by aliens. "We first learned of alien activity from this footage," the Men in Black said. She slid her palm down, and the screen switched to a clip from months earlier, the command room inside a Hydra airborne aircraft carrier. The scene was familiar to most viewers. The former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, stood with his team facing dozens of Hydra agents. As they argued, shots suddenly rang out. The firefight was chaotic and deadly. Then someone on Fury's side collapsed, and where a human had fallen, a green-skinned non-human emerged. The feed paused and returned to the Men in Black. "This green figure is the invading alien," she said. A few months ago, that strange figure drew everyone's attention. But at the time, the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, claimed the deceased was an enhanced human and that the changes were a side effect of the enhancement serum. He almost convinced the whole world. "He didn't fool us," she continued. "We traced the network and found a secretly intercepted video." The screen cut to a different angle of the same room. Fury and several others lay bound in a corner. A Hydra agent walked past, only to be shot dead, apparently by the Hydra leader. When that agent hit the floor, he too transformed into a green-skinned creature. Several people in the command room gasped. The Hydra leader spun and fired 6 shots at the 6 who had reacted. One by one, they fell and in turn became green. The revelation stunned viewers. One enhanced human might be conceivable. 7 green-skinned soldiers, some of them Hydra members, was not. Most damning of all, this tape had been intercepted. Why seize it if not to hide a truth? The video cut back to the Men in Black. "This was originally footage Rising Tide planned to upload," she said, "but it was intercepted by a mysterious force. In reality, Leon had specifically instructed Agent K to hold the tape for a decisive moment like this, but that could not be disclosed. So the now disbanded Rising Tide once again took the fall. The unusual nature of those 7 green-skinned figures made us very alert," she went on. "So while we were dismantling Hydra, we were also tracking the individuals in that clip. After months of investigation, we found traces of them in various countries. Following those clues led us to the truth." She paused and took a breath. "The green-skinned figures are Skrulls," she declared. "They are interstellar refugees, settled on Earth unilaterally by the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury. If they were harmless, you might call his action a gesture of goodwill. But these Skrulls are not harmless. They are the thugs of the universe. They are invaders." Chapter 195, Global Shock. Skrulls are born with a unique ability. That ability lets them mimic someone else's appearance, replicate their memories, even without physical contact. This isn't alarmist talk. It's the horrifying truth we uncovered while tracking Fury. The Men in Black agent gestured and switched the feed. A surveillance video filled the screen. Under the dim glow of a street lamp, a white man in a trench coat stood framed by the light. The rest of the street was swallowed by shadow. From the blur stepped a hooded figure. They appeared to speak, then the hooded figure suddenly drew a knife from beneath his cloak and plunged it into the man's neck, then kneeled to hold him gently. The hood came off, revealing green skin. Under the lamp's light, that face melted and shifted, slowly taking on the features of the white man. The footage cut off abruptly. "The man killed in that footage is Rowan, a mid-level MI6 intelligence officer," the Men in Black said. "You can see his carotid artery was pierced. He was dead beyond doubt. But in reality," he continued, "Mr. Rowan is still working at MI6 and has even become an ace agent." As the revelation registered, live comments swarmed the screen, exclamation marks and question marks flooding the video, viewers openly stunned. The men in black lowered another clip. "This isn't the only Ace agent," the agent said. "We recovered many surveillance videos that were deliberately destroyed in the past." The screen began to play a rapid sequence of footage. For 10 minutes, surveillance cameras from around the world ran in quick succession, black and white in color, grainy and high definition. Some clips showed a back alley in New York, others a busy street in Serbia. Every clip ended the same way, a scroll replacing an earthling. The replaced people were a mix: terrorists, officials from key departments, ordinary citizens. As the montage continued, faces in the viewing audience grew grimmer. Shopkeepers and street vendors, even beggars on New York sidewalks, felt a chill. Suddenly, the world they knew felt perilously unfamiliar. Any passerby might be a Skrull. Jarvis and the men in black had crawled one closed local network after another, sifting through discarded data to pull these raw videos together. Tony Stark had watched the footage the day before and been rendered speechless by its implications. When the dozen or so clips ended, the Men in Black woman returned to summarize. "Based on reliable evidence alone, hundreds of humans have already been replaced by Skrulls," she said. And virtually all of those replacements had some contact with Fury. Some were Fury's enemies, some were sources he needed intelligence from, and some were people he suspected were problematic. "When we investigated Hydra, we asked, what allowed Fury to rise from a field operative to director in 7 or 8 years?" she continued. "I think we have the answer. Fury was using his alien friends to clear obstacles, securing promotions and removing rivals," the agent said. "In return, he sheltered them. They colluded. He even helped establish SBORD with these Skrulls, an organization reporting directly to the Security Council. What they did inside SWORD, we don't yet know." She took a breath, then dropped the next bomb. "In our investigation, the number of Skrulls presently on Earth is as high as 1,000,000. At the word million, thousands of minds went blank. Millions of aliens who can change their faces and copy memories already on Earth? The thought spread like wildfire. For the first time, many people truly feared for the planet. The Men in Black's authoritative voice suddenly felt like the only anchor. "Some live in shelters, others have replaced dying individuals and continue to operate openly," the agent said. "There's no doubt these alien hooligans are infiltrating human society. They're learning from us and integrating with one goal, to eventually replace humanity. Faced with a threat like the Skrulls, the Men in Black will never stand idle," she declared. "We now officially warn the Skrulls, leave Earth. Over the next 3 days, we'll deploy equipment capable of identifying Skrulls to countries around the globe. To everyone watching, especially government officials, be vigilant toward those around you. Be wary of the Skrulls." The video ended and the screen went black, but the live comments kept streaming. "Those Skrulls deserve to die. A few months ago, Hydra attacked us, and now Skrulls? This is too much. I was wrong. Superman and the Men in Black are protecting Earth, not trying to be dictators. Send the IDs to Chicago ASAP. No wonder my wife has been acting strange. Coming home late, showering immediately, uninterested. She's been replaced. Great Trinity Superman, please redeem these lost lambs." Across the globe, people debated the Skrull threat. National disputes and political posturing faded in the face of potential invasion. Within just over 20 minutes of release, the video spread to every corner of the internet. Topics like Skrull, human traitor Fury, Tide, and replacing humanity flooded trending lists. Intelligence agencies tore the footage apart and presented the findings to senior officials. Their verdicts were unanimous. The evidence was credible. Skrulls exposed in the video were detained on the spot. Some escaped by reverting their appearance, but that only raised vigilance among security forces worldwide. Half an hour after the broadcast, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council issued a joint statement. With written communiques, press conferences, and video briefings, the message was unambiguous. Expel the Skrulls and apprehend Fury. Chapter 196, Nick Fury and the Skrulls. Motherfucker! In the cold vacuum of space, inside the inverted conical shell of the Divine Blade space station, Nick Fury stared at the Men in Black video playing on his desk. A string of curses slipped out of his mouth. He dismissed the alarmist claims in the first half of the video as theatrics, probably the Stark brothers lashing out after discovering his people had been digging into Leon's intel. Fury fast-forwarded through the footage and began thinking about countermeasures. The video had stirred up the internet, but that clamor would be temporary. The web had no memory. He only needed to placate the 5 permanent members of the UN, and the rabble-rousing online would fade. In Fury's eyes, this wasn't even a true crisis. What worried him far more was how Tony Stark had detected Skrull infiltration in the first place. A shape-shifted Skrull carried its host's memories and had access to Estordid's advanced gear. They shouldn't have been found. Fury's thoughts drifted until the Men in Black's narration snapped him back. As the speaker recited details about the Skrull, almost as if reading from a dossier, Fury's face darkened. How did they know so much? Had Superman and Iron Man somehow run into the Kree and gotten this intelligence? The next segment of the video made his stomach drop. Dozens of surveillance clips that should have been deleted were laid bare, exposing Skrull abilities and the real threat they posed. Fury could already picture the panic among world leaders. He trusted the Skrull because of his shared history, because he had Captain Marvel at his back, and because of what he had seen. But politicians and the public did not. Worse, many of the people shown as Skrull replacements in the footage were exactly the enemies or mission targets Fury had used to build his career. He no longer had a clean way to explain himself. And then they said 1 million. Fury's eyes widened. Motherfucker, 1 million Skrull? Where did 1 million come from? Weren't there only a few thousand? He wanted to call the claim out as false, but even he found himself doubting the numbers. Far away on Earth, in the ruined shell of Chernobyl, the abandoned city should have been empty. Instead, amid radiation-soaked carcasses of buildings, green figures slipped through the rubble. Around the crippled power plant, countless green heads bustled. Skrull refugees had quietly taken over maintenance posts and hidden in places satellites rarely passed. Unaffected by nuclear fallout, these leak sites had become ideal shelters. They had even renamed Chernobyl New Skrullos, an echo of the home they'd lost and a declaration they intended to remain. In a warehouse inside the plant, Skrull General Taros, his wife Sauron, and several high-ranking Skrull officials sat around a long table. A projector replayed the Men in Black footage on loop. The warehouse was unnervingly still, the atmosphere taut as a bowstring. "General, what should we do now?" someone asked into the silence. Taros leaned forward, hands on the table, watching the looping video. He who had led his people toward hope looked stranded for an answer. At last he spoke, voice low. "Wait for Fury. He and Captain Marvel promised to help us find a habitable planet. They won't abandon us." "But he can barely protect himself," another voice countered. "The United Nations has already issued a notice for his arrest. He will find a way." Taros closed his eyes, unwilling to meet their stares. "He's Fury. We have to trust him." "And if he fails?" someone pressed. "Do we go to the humans and ask for land? Confess and beg for a homeland?" Taros said nothing. The question hung unanswered, and the room fell silent. Taros was a dove. Most of his leadership were doves too, but there were hawks in every pack. "General, why don't we declare war?" A young Skrull erupted, slamming his fist on the table. He was thin and fierce-eyed. "Many of us are already placed in high positions by Fury. If we declare war, their governments will collapse. We might not lose. We could even replace people in their weapons departments and take control of their nukes," he added, eyes wild. "Shut up, Gravik," Taros snapped, slamming the table himself, the sound startling everyone. "Do not entertain the idea of attacking Earth. Never." Gravik clenched his fist but stayed silent. Taros rubbed his temples and sat back. The youth's instinct for violence was predictable and terrifying. They didn't understand how strong Captain Marvel was, or that Superman walked the planet now. Against those monsters, an all-out Skrull war would be suicide. Meeting adjourned. "Go home and wait for news," Taros said, waving them away. One by one they left, and soon only Taros and Sauron remained. "Don't worry, Fury won't abandon us," Sauron said, stroking her husband's forehead. Taros sighed. "I hope so. Beep, beep." His communicator vibrated. "Fury." Taros's spirits brightened. He answered, and Fury's holographic projection rose above the table. Fury cut straight to the point. Taros, tell me honestly, what have you been hiding about the destruction of the Skrull homeworld? Taros's hopeful expression froze. He'd wanted to reassure Fury, but now he found his gaze slipping away. He swallowed, then forced out a nod. I promise, you know everything you need to know. Is that so? Fury's voice rose. Are the things the men in black said in that video lies, or are there things I'm not supposed to know? Chapter 197. Zhang Furui finally pressed the pager. Taros drew a slow breath. Here's what happened. We were routed by the Kree and fled. Millions of Skrull refugees lost their homes. Oh, Nick Fury's gaze sharpened. All of them came to Earth, or are they still drifting somewhere else? Taros swallowed. His green face was drawn and tired. He licked his lips. After a few tries, he nodded. They're here. Who? Fury's tone went hard. Who is here? Taros's shoulders sagged. Everyone, the refugees. Fury barked a laugh that had no humor in it. 1,000,000 Skrulls on Earth? Taros nodded again, helpless. Yes. You lied to me. Fury slammed a fist on the table. Do you know what you've done? Taros tried to explain, voice desperate. Nick, I sent out a beacon to the galaxy. I told fleeing Skrulls there were sympathetic worlds willing to take us. But the universe was hunting us. There was nowhere else. It was either death or Earth. I'm a Skrull general. I had no choice. Fury's anger didn't abate. No choice? That's convenient. You think you can decide to dump millions of refugees here, and it's not my problem? Taros fired back, furious now in return. You treated us like spies, like tools, sent us on missions that risked our lives for you. And now you act offended? You hid this from me, Fury shot back. You brought millions to Earth without my orders. Taros, tell me what you intend to do. Taros's voice cracked. I want you to help them integrate. Let the Skrulls live among humans. That's impossible. Fury's laugh was bitter. You've lived on Earth 10 years. You should know humans can barely live together among themselves. Where would 1,000,000 Skrulls go? Taros's face seemed to age before Fury's eyes, hair whitening, lines deepening. He grasped at the last hope. Is there no other way? No, Fury cut him off. I'm calling Carol back. Tell her anything useful you can. For now, if you don't want to be taken, you should leave Earth. With that, he snapped the connection shut. In the empty warehouse, Taros sagged into a chair, his wife supporting him. On the Ord station, Fury slid into his armchair with the same exhausted slump. The leather exhaled a heavy sigh as he settled into it. For the first time that day, his face showed helplessness rather than fury. Taros, Fury muttered to himself, staring at the desktop as if his eyes could pierce into deep space. He sat in silence a long time. Finally, he opened a drawer, took out a pager, and set it on the table. He pressed the transmit button. He hadn't expected to call Carol, not over Skrulls, but there was no choice. Fury turned his chair to look through the observation window at the black beyond the capsule. A trace of wariness softened his usually severe features. There really were 1,000,000 Skrulls on Earth. If they stayed, war would be inevitable. If they left, Ord would be politically destroyed. The organization he'd spent more than a decade building could dissolve in weeks. He knew who had kicked this hornet's nest. The Stark brothers. Fury didn't let himself hate them. Whether Hydra or Skrulls, these threats were hidden beneath the calm. If not for Tony and Leon uncovering them early, the consequences might have been far worse. He felt a guarded gratitude toward them and an even sharper sense of foreboding. He was about to lose everything, and no amount of vigilance now felt sufficient. Meanwhile, in New York at Avengers Tower, Leon and Tony stood side by side behind a one-way mirror. Neither knew that half the enemy forces had already surrendered. Tony didn't know. Leon wasn't particularly worried. He'd let the men in black run most of the operation, and apart from helping Tony with a Skrull identification device, he'd had no intention of personally overseeing the expulsions. Unless a Super Skrull showed up, this level of threat didn't require his hands-on involvement. They watched Captain America, Steve Rogers, lying on a white lab bed on the other side of the glass. You called me over just to watch? Leon asked. To watch a century-old popsicle thaw, Tony grinned. Popsicle? Not bad. Why didn't I think of that? He folded his arms. I didn't call you just to watch. I called you to make sure this is foolproof. And to provide security, Leon added, arching an eyebrow. Security? Leon echoed. What are you worried about? Are you getting paranoid? What are the odds someone would attack an international agency? Ever since you briefly let off that terrifying burst when you took the Space Stone a month ago, the Avengers Tower has had people sniffing around from the mystical side, Tony said. We've intercepted several of those weird witches. Leon's interest piqued. Witches? Where are they? Let me see. You could see them, Tony said with a shrug, if they hadn't all slipped away. The devices and agents S-Shield left behind can't hold those folks. That's disappointing. Leon didn't look bothered. I leaked the stone's energy at Kamartaj on purpose once to spread attention thin. If those people won't touch the sanctums of the mystics, they're not that bold. Tony pointed towards Steve through the glass. All the more reason to strengthen the Avengers, which is why what we're doing now matters, recruiting new people. You mean Captain America? You're actually trying to pull him into the Avengers? Leon asked, surprised. Tony's expression was all business. Yes, no more heroes drift in by accident. We need people who can stand up to both the physical and the supernatural. Cap's exactly the kind of steady we need. Why not? Tony said, seeing no problem with it. He pressed his right hand against the observation glass. In the texts and videos the old man left, the things mentioned most are his inventions. Right after that is Steve Rogers. We're literally ranked behind this 70-year-old ice pop. He looked at Captain America on the other side. From those lines I saw nothing but praise, unrestrained, glowing praise, as if he weren't even a real person. I want to see how unlike a person he can really be, Leon said. So you're jealous, right? Jealous? You think I'd be jealous of him? Good heavens, jealous of someone who's been frozen for 70 years? Tony snapped, wounded. Howard Stark had praised Tony sparingly in the old videos, but Captain America got Howard's highest praise. Tony had been stewing about it. He'd already half-planned how to outshine Rogers. Their first meeting was bound to be a little tense. Do you see Coulson over there? Tony pointed to the man standing by the bed. He's a fan of Captain America. If it weren't for his enthusiastic promotion of this rescue, I'd happily leave Mr. Ice Pop under the ice. Better to stay frozen than be dragged into this strange modern world. I'm being humanitarian, and you act like I'm jealous? Leon studied Coulson, the bald, middle-aged agent, who was staring at Rogers with bright, almost reverent eyes. Leon remembered that same look from their earlier encounters. Perhaps, he said noncommittal, then spoke into the air. Jarvis, what do you think? Jarvis replied through the speaker near Leon. Young Master Leon, I can confirm that Agent Coulson admires Captain America, but the rescue was actually pushed by Mr. Stark. Leon spread his hands toward Tony. See, it's not that I don't believe you, but you're distorting the facts. Tony blinked. Jarvis taking sides. This was new and mildly disconcerting. All right, I'm just a little curious, he said, turning away, but definitely not jealous. Young Master, I also don't think Mr. Stark is jealous. He's never been an envious person, Jarvis added helpfully. See, Jarvis understands me better. Tony grinned. Leon rolled his eyes. Jarvis could even flatter Tony now. Whatever you say, Leon muttered, but why is Coulson still here? He's Nick Fury's confidant, Tony said. Now that you're bringing Avengers agents in on the scroll matter, you would think he'd be sent away. Soon, Leon said. Once Rogers wakes, Coulson will head to Africa to negotiate with Wakanda. Right now, he just wants to say a few words to his idol before he goes. Tony shrugged. Besides, Fury's confidants may trust him, but they don't necessarily trust the scrolls. When S-Shield was reorganizing, Hawkeye and Hill were the ones who first reported the green-skinned aliens to me. Any sensible person would be wary of someone who can change their face. Is that so? Leon said. Seems their thinking hasn't been assimilated by Black Egg. No one knows what Nick Fury is thinking, Tony replied, glancing at the clock. 7 more minutes. Are you sure Mr. Ice Pop is okay? He frowned. According to Jarvis, he should wake within half an hour, but Rogers still looks like he's sleeping soundly. Don't worry, he's very healthy, Leon said. All his cells are intact. It's a miracle. His neural activity is gradually increasing. Jarvis is right. He'll wake soon. Leon's tone shifted. Why do I suddenly feel like we're a bunch of dwarfs nervously waiting for Snow White to wake up? Tony smirked. So he won't wake up until his prince kisses him? Why don't you go kiss him awake, Prince Tony? Leon teased. Sorry, Pepper said all kissing privileges are reserved for her. Tony shot back, tapping the glass. Any kid who's read Captain America's storybook knows Rogers owes Peggy Carter a dance. Maybe we should invite Agent Carter. Carter. Leon didn't finish. At that exact moment, Steve Rogers opened his eyes. His icy blue eyes were misted with confusion. The first thing he registered was a ceiling he didn't recognize and the sharp scent of disinfectant in his nose. Slowly, the neural network that had been frozen for half a century came back online. Memories surged and overlapped, glaciers, the crash, then blinked away into the new, antiseptic ceiling. Where was he? Alert in an instant, Captain America used the core strength the super soldier serum had given him. He sat up halfway, clutching the thin white blanket as if it were a weapon to shield him. "Who are you? Where is this?" he demanded. His gaze swept the room and, as was his habit, catalogued everything. Beneath him, a medical bed. Beside it, large, precise equipment, medical machines. 4 walls, 1 door. One wall had a huge mirror inset into it. The other 3 were covered with large posters. At the top of each, a year was printed, spanning from the 1950s to the early 21st century, 6 posters in all. Below the dates were photographs, home appliances, communication devices, modes of transport, cityscapes, hundreds of images marking the world's changes in chronological order. Steve's eyes, trained to read and remember, took in the layout in a single glance. The posters made his confusion worse. Each picture was both familiar and alien. Things had changed, but faint shadows of the old still lingered. He felt an ache at that. Those shadows weren't his. They belonged to a world that had moved on without him. The people around him, some in lab coats, some in suits, showed no hostility. They looked at him with curiosity, surprise, and in some cases admiration. That made him uneasy in a new way. "Where is this?" he asked again, but his grip on the blanket loosened. "Captain, you're finally awake," Agent Coulson said, hurrying forward and putting his hands on his hips, awkwardly pleased. "It's 2008. You've been frozen for nearly 70 years, and you're finally awake. Welcome to the modern world, Captain." Steve stared at him. 70 years? He turned his head slowly and looked again at the timeline of posters. As his gaze moved from one to the next, worlds shifted. Objects he used to know vanished and were replaced by new ones he didn't recognize. Time had been condensed into those images, and it made him feel small and utterly alone. The photos were both a record and a reproach. Life had continued, and someone he had once hoped to dance with might have been buried somewhere in the decades he had missed. His single, sharp thought was the same every time his eyes landed on a new photograph. Had she vanished with time, tucked away in one of those posters from the 80s or the 90s? Had he missed that promised dance? On the other side of the one-way mirror, Leon pointed at Captain America, who was being debriefed by Coulson. "I told you," he said. "Instead of listening to those psychologists and staging some era-specific recreation, it's better to put the truth right in front of him." "See? He's taking it pretty quickly, isn't he?" Tony replied. "He is, but he's also on the verge of breaking down." Tony noticed Steve Rogers' pupils trembling. He saw something in the man's expression that reminded him of himself. Trapped in the Afghanistan cave, both carrying the grief of impending, seemingly eternal separation from the people they loved. The captain that Howard had described as too perfect to be human suddenly became human again, with all the messy, painful edges that word implied. "He's probably thinking of Carter," Leon said. "Like you said, even a child knows that dance would be a lifetime of regret. But now Carter is married and has dementia. There's no chance for them." In the movie arc of this world's main timeline, another Steve Rogers from a parallel universe had traveled back in the 1970s to return the space stone he borrowed. After returning it, he stayed and spent the rest of his life with Peggy Carter. He only reappeared after the blip ended to meet the younger Falcon and Winter Soldier and pass on the mantle of Captain America. Tony felt a pang of wistfulness. Yeah, Carter suddenly found her other half in her 40s. Rogers would be devastated to learn that. "Tony, do you know who Carter's husband is?" Leon raised an eyebrow. "Why do you ask?" Tony thought for a moment. "No impression. It was supposed to be a secret marriage. The man was reportedly classified personnel." "Is that so?" Leon went quiet, then eased the suppression on his super hearing and, seconds later, caught the piece of information he wanted. "Just as I thought," he murmured. He studied the hollowed-out Captain America on the other side of the glass, and a slightly mischievous, almost gleeful idea popped into his head. After a beat, he turned to Tony. "Are you sure you want to recruit Captain America into the Avengers?" "Of course," Tony said without looking back. "The Avengers need a continuously active symbol, right? Superman would be more suitable, but you don't plan to join my lineup." "I'm listed," Leon shrugged. "I'll act if there's a crisis that endangers Earth." "It's precisely because you only show up at the end and don't participate in daily operations that I want Rogers," Tony said. Leon spread his hands. "Since you've decided, I won't object. But what about Bucky? Will you keep it from Rogers? Bucky is his best friend." Bucky, a flicker of conflict crossed Tony's face. He pursed his lips. "Concealment isn't a solution. I'll be frank with Rogers." "How frank?" "Find the right moment and tell him the whole story," Tony exhaled. "Of course, the process doesn't have to be brutal. You're going to tell him face to face? Of course that's your method." Leon shook his head. "Fine, it's your Avengers. You make the call. But I killed Bucky and I've never regretted it. Then if Rogers wants revenge in the end, let him come for me." Leon walked to the door, casually pulled a bottle of Zeus spring water from his coat and handed it to Tony. "I'm leaving now. Here, this bottle. You decide what to do with it. You've seen what it does. You know when to use it." Tony took the jade bottle and watched Leon's retreating figure. A cool sensation spread from his palm into his body, making his chest tighten. He glanced back at Captain America through the glass and remembered Leon's earlier question about Carter. Suddenly, he understood why Leon had given him the spring water. "This kid, compensation with attitude," Tony chuckled to himself. The heaviness in his chest from Bucky eased. He assumed Leon had given the spring water to comfort Steve. In truth, Leon was partly mischievous and partly showing support for an old comrade. Tony, certain he'd guessed the truth, pocketed the bottle and walked toward the room where Steve and the others were. He pushed the door open. "Soldier Steve Rogers, as far as I know, you have a meeting, don't you?" Nick Fury's warning to Taros had little effect. Even the Dove faction, represented by Taros, largely agreed to leave Earth temporarily. But within any people, there are always dissenting voices. A day passed. Only the Skrull refugees and shelters had evacuated. In other places, the Skrull had already replaced humans. Many had become accustomed to life on Earth. Some held high positions and lorded it over others. Some did the daily, menial work, but at least had stability. Even at worst, life on Earth was far better than fleeing through a hostile universe. How could they abandon everything and return to a precarious life on the run? Besides, they believed their disguises were flawless and undetectable. After all, Skrull concealment ran deep. They could pass genetic tests and had spent centuries evading pursuit. Compared to the vast universe, a small, remote, backward planet like Earth wasn't worth the trouble. The so-called Men in Black were nothing but clowns. The Skrull who remained on Earth were unafraid, until the Men in Black started distributing identification devices to governments. The devices were mobile radiation towers, entirely black, conical, about 3 meters tall. When activated, they emitted a special radiation in a 10-kilometer radius that interfered with the Skrull's disguise ability. It made their disguises flicker on and off, alternating between their human forms and their true green skin. When the identification towers were switched on across the globe, everyone froze. The staff cleaning President Ellis's bedroom in the White House was a Skrull. The Queen's personal attendant at Buckingham Palace was a Skrull. The governor of New Delhi was a Skrull. People stepped outside into ordinary sunlight and wind, and everywhere they turned, green-skinned figures stood where humans had been. Skrull, Skrull, Skrull. The exposed Skrull didn't even seem to understand what was happening. Many were stunned, bewildered, even as they were knocked down or killed. On that day, tens of thousands of Skrull were exposed in broad daylight. The world realized the Men in Black had not been lying. Countries slid into martial law. Men in Black teams deployed worldwide to locate and detain Skrull. The Avengers were sent out, led by a newly awakened Captain America, to hunt down those who had hidden among humanity. Fear finally reached the remaining Skrull. Once exposed, those who had held power could no longer exercise it. That night, thousands of Skrull ships launched from every corner of the globe, rising into the dark. As a people who had spent generations fleeing across the cosmos, they knew how to retreat fast. Within a day, almost overnight, millions of Skrull had evacuated the Earth. Chapter 200, Captain Marvel returns. One day later. In the vastness of the universe, a bright star lit the surrounding galaxy. Sunlight streamed through the void, carrying warmth to distant reaches. At the edge of the beam, the dim cosmic expanse was abruptly fractured into hexagonal panels by an unseen force. A jump point, the Marvel Universe's method of faster-than-light travel. As one hexagonal segment vanished, another linked a star system tens of thousands of light-years away to the solar system. A starship emerged from that distant system and shot through the jump point. It streaked past the hulking planets, Neptune, Uranus, and came to rest in the region of Mars's orbit. Dozens of vessels hovered there, a dense cluster like locusts swarming a single ear of grain. When the distant ship finished its approach, a brilliant beam of light shot down like a high-speed torch across the black, pulsing into the fleet. It swept to the largest ship, descended, and passed through an open hatch. The hatch closed. Captain Marvel's surging photon glow died away. She powered down the suit's space mode. The mohawk shape of her cowl relaxed into shoulder-length golden hair that fell over the angular square of her face. Waiting for her on the ramp were Taros and, behind him, his wife and daughter. He had come personally to meet her. "Long time no see, Carol," Taros said warmly. "Taros, what are you doing here?" Carol rested a hand on her hip. Her sleek combat suit emphasized her lithe, powerful frame. Seeing an old friend after so long made her smile. For a moment, she seemed almost ordinary. "If you hadn't messaged me, I'd have thought this whole fleet was some Empire's invasion force. How could we attack Earth? The Skrull and Earthlings are friends," Taros said with an awkward smile. "Of course, I know that." Carol spread her arms and laughed. "Why the solemn faces? Sauron, Gaia, come here. Let me give you both a hug." She embraced Taros's wife and daughter, then fixed him with a more serious look. "So you're here to support Earth? You brought all these ships, even civilian transports. Who's invading Earth?" Taros's bark-like face twitched. Shame warmed him from the inside out. He told only part of the story, softening the truth about how many Skrull had only begun evacuating when it was almost too late. Even so, Carol's smile faded. "A million Skrull?" she said, incredulous, the same look Fury always wore. "How could you do this, Taros?" Taros managed a bitter smile. "I'm sorry, I couldn't stand by and watch my people be hunted across the stars." "You can't just—" Carol started, then checked herself when she noticed Gaia, still a teenager, standing nearby. She put her hands on her hips, looked down, and exhaled a long, disappointed sigh. Taros bowed his head. He knew he'd let Carol down. "So?" she asked. "Did you ask Fury to call me back? What do you want me to do?" He had to appeal to what remained between them. "I'm sorry, Carol. I know I failed you and Fury, but my people are innocent, good people. They don't deserve to die out here in the cold. 10 years ago, when you were under Kree control, I was lucky enough to meet you at a critical moment," Taros continued. "To fight alongside you, to hear you promise you would help us find a new home. That was everything to me. I know how powerful you are, and I believed your kindness would give us hope. So I asked my people to come to Earth temporarily. I thought we'd only stay a little while you helped us find another world. I was wrong to think it would be easy." Carol's face softened as he spoke. She'd spent more than a decade alone, crossing the Milky Way, upholding justice in silence. Memories of past promises weighed on her. They were like old photographs, faded but precious. Guilt crept in. "No, Taros, don't blame yourself. I'm sorry, too." She stepped forward and patted his shoulder. "There aren't many worlds that can support life. I was too optimistic before." Taros's hope flickered again at her gentleness. "It's not your fault," he said, forced cheerfulness undercut by grief. "It's just, we'll be homeless again, wandering in ships. If we run into Kree patrols, their cannons can tear our vessels apart. We could lose so many, especially the children." Carol's lashes trembled. She pictured the scene he described and felt the sting of responsibility. After a tense pause, she said, "There's still a way." "What way?" Taros sounded near despair. "We have nowhere left to go. Earth is rejecting you because they fear your numbers and your power," Carol said. "If I can show them you won't be a threat, vouch for you, maybe they'll allow you to stay for the time being." I'll find companions and resources, she promised. We'll search quickly for another suitable habitat. Her voice grew firm. But a million scroll gathered in one place is dangerous. Even with the best intentions, people change when populations get that large. You'll have to arrange to resettle a portion of your people elsewhere. If we can reduce the base population, your community will be easier to manage, and it will give us time to find a permanent home. Carol clenched her fist with resolve. That's the best plan for now.